Call the budget hearings back to order. And next up, we have Planning Department. Any questions for Stan on his budget?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
In the stormwater planning, do they come through you first, your department?
That's city engineering.
I know, but do they come through you for any approval?
They do through the subdivision process. When they develop a subdivision, they're required to submit stormwater information on how they're going to handle it throughout the subdivision. So we do have that as a part of the process, but the engineering department reviews that for us.
Okay, does your department check it or engineering?
Engineering.
Okay, thank you. Because we have had some problems where the construction companies say they're gonna do it, and they don't, with respect to stormwater.
Yeah, there's, sometimes we do have things that we have to check on and things that may have not been completed. And when we do, of course, the developer is responsible for a period of time for those improvements. And if we find that through inspection, those improvements are not done up to the construction drawings that they submitted, we can make them make those improvements.
Thank you.
There was some discussion earlier about the IT budget and GIS being removed, that line item being removed. Is it included in your budget?
I didn't see it in our budget.
Yeah, I don't either. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, if they've moved it, it hasn't shown up on my budget.
Currently, the planning department employs GIS draftsmen, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As we move further down the line and start implementing more mapping and technology and trying to understand not only from the planning perspective but also from the city engineer's perspective on how we geolocate some of the things that we need to take inventory of, does our current GIS capacity allow for those improvements to happen, or do we need to look possibly in the future within the next year or two about expanding the GIS program?
We have managed to do quite well with the system that we have and the information that we're able to put in there. As the city continues and as finances and our permit, during this time we understand the constraints and we operate within them, and we do the best with what we have to work with and try to max it out, and that's what we've done. But going forward, there's always going to be opportunities to improve, and as hopefully as resources come, we can build that in, whether it be on the planning side or the GIS side or anything else.
All right, any other questions for Stan? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
She's got building and housing codes, rolling.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council.
Good afternoon.
Does everybody know me?
Yes, sir. Can you tell us about your current staffing levels, and do you have any vacancies in the department or furloughs that you're currently dealing with?
Yeah, we had two full-time employees retire during the last incentive. They have not been hired back, and we have one on furlough. One of those was going to come back part-time, but that's kind of time the coronavirus hit. So we're down 2 staff.
Okay. Is that reflected in the budget?
I believe it is.
Okay.
We have been doing cross-training. Everybody's working together. We have been cross-training. We're getting things done with the staff that we have.
Okay.
So we're multitasking.
given the decrease in your budget and a chunk of that coming from salaries, you feel that you can adequately perform what we need to do in the coming year with what you've got?
Yes, I do, and I've had discussions with the mayor and Lauren about software that would enable a consumer contractor to go online and purchase their permits, schedule inspections, check their inspections that way. So I think utilizing software that way would cut down. We could use the staff that we have to handle that with new software.
That's a point that I was going to bring up with Mr. Pilot. From that perspective, from the contractor perspective, it's been relayed to me, having the ability to be able to look at where in the timeline, we submit to planning, the distribution, everything goes out to the appropriate departments, who's checked off, where they are in the process, I think would be advantageous to continuing a good relationship with our construction community and making building in Jackson and that economic development ultimately easier. Is this software that you're talking about, is that included in the budget?
No, it's not. We're still looking at it.
Okay.
We're still looking at it, but I think it would be advantageous for a contractor to, if a inspection is rejected, to click on that permit, see a picture of why and an explanation. Saves on phone calls, us answering the phone calls, calling the inspector, say, why'd you reject it? It's all quick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my goal for the department at some point in time.
And that's something that we could use not only within the building department, but the planning department, the engineering department, as well as integrating JEA into that process in some way.
I feel like we could, yeah.
Okay.
I would say during the COVID, when it was going on, we did not miss inspections or permits. A lot of people called in, and we have, credit card. We still issued permits. We still did inspections.
Are we discussing the housing codes
Yes.
enforcement as well?
Yes.
How many officers do you have currently that are inspecting?
In our housing department, we have 6.
And typically, how many violations does the city issue a year?
I'm not sure. It varies. Like right now, we're super busy. 10 to 20 a day on grass itself. That's not counting blight, abandoned cars, junk houses, vacant houses. So it varies. But then when we turn around to winter, we can see a lot more because the vegetation's back. So that's when we really hit backyards and stuff we can see. So
Could you kind of explain the process? So the housing codes enforcement, that officer goes out, they see an instance of blight or an overgrown yard, they issue, and correct me if I'm wrong in any of these steps, they issue a ticket per se to them to correct the action. If the action's not corrected, somebody goes out and mows their yard or puts them into environmental court. Is that?
yeah, that's correct. They receive a letter and with so many days to comply. Once they don't comply, we will send the city crew out to mow it, place a lien on it for the amount of the mowing. And then if it continues to be a problem, we send them to environmental court and let the judge rule.
Okay. Do they go and inspect, do we have a system where we're inspecting rental housing, especially low-income rental housing, to make sure it's up to par for those residents?
We do have certified inspectors that if we have to be invited in to look at them, we don't randomly go by. But if we are invited in for somebody with a code violation, we do go and we do inspect it and contact the owner of the property.
Are there any communication programs that we have to communicate to residents of these types of facilities that to be aware of what a code violation looks like and how to contact the codes department? If their landlord refuses to fix the hole in the floor, is there a mechanism or are we advertising or marketing out to say, hey, if you have an issue, please make us aware of it. We'll go and send a letter to your landlord to correct that. Do we have any program like that?
We don't, not that I know
We don't in the city,
of.
but West Tennessee Legal Services does.
Okay,
Right, and I think on our, when they launch the new website, we will have a housing link where they can report a complaint or a problem. And I think that's part of it, abandoned cars, blight, code violations. But specifically to your question, I don't know that there's anything they can look at to say, hey, that is a code violation. You know, most things we get is my roof's leaking, or, you know, my electrical's not working, or something like that.
mm-hmm,
It's obvious things that they see, and that's what they report.
yeah, okay. I think that's something, you know, as we've discussed in previous, One Jackson master plan about blight and slumlords, is having the city put out, information that communicate to those residents, of those, multifamily complexes that there is an avenue that they can go down to have, their landlord be held accountable on. I think that's something that we need to look into on how we communicate that to the public. If West Tennessee Legal Services, if there's a way that we can work with them to expand that message, I think it would be helpful in the community.
Okay, I agree.
So under yours, we're just looking at building and housing codes. Is
That's
that
it.
correct?
That's
Thank you.
correct.
All right, any other questions? All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
To Animal Care Center.
Hello.
Those of you who don't know, this is Whitney Owen. She's our new director of the Animal Care Center. All of a few months, so.
Whitney, could you run us through what operational changes you've made to the department, or to the Animal Care Center since you've come on board?
You want the high points?
Let's go. Yeah.
Okay. I've been there since the second week of January. When I arrived, the average length of stay for animals in the facility was a hair over 11 months. It's a very low turnover rate when you're serving a population as large as ours. Every animal in the building that has been there longer than 6 months has now been adopted. Our average length of stay at this point is a little over 90 days. So we're working to increase our turnover rate so we can serve more people. The mayor informed me when he moved me that by the end of the calendar year, we will be open intake. That's not up for discussion, it's not optional. So we are looking at ways to better serve the community by providing a wider range of services to make us more effective from a pickup and rehome standpoint, but also from a how can we keep your animal in your house instead of you having to surrender it because of financial difficulty, because you're moving, things like that. We are working with the community to make their lives a little easier, especially with the COVID shutdowns. We're looking at a lot of financial struggle. So we have expanded our pet food bank to anybody in Madison County. We're not just serving the city of Jackson, and we've had a ridiculously supportive response to that program. We ran out of cat food Thursday a week ago, and I put out a social media call for help, and we had over 500 pounds of food donated in 72 hours. So the public is really responding to what we're doing. We have been able to help over 100 people with our program so far. Our intake is up. Our ability to say yes as opposed to no is up. We are looking at, over the next 90 days, altering the current facility to make it more conducive to long-term success, since we are going to be in it, indefinitely at this point. We are looking at about $15,000 total to alter the facility to make it open intake viable. As of right now, I do not have a safe place to house an aggressive dog. Every kennel in the building has public access. And anybody over 4 feet tall can put their entire head or their entire arm in any cage in the building, which obviously is not, from a liability standpoint, not a good idea. So we are installing aggressive dog kennels in a separate room that the public does not have access to. That will be up and functional in the next 60 days. We're doing some changes to the backyard to make it a little more usable, user-friendly for the public in our volunteer program. And then we're really going to be focusing on our community outreach. efforts. I'm not sure how familiar y'all are with animal services in Jackson. It has been woefully inadequate since its inception. I've been here 12 years, and honestly, until the last year or so, I've been very embarrassed to be involved with our program, because it just did not meet the needs of the public. Nationwide, the national average is 66% of American households own pets. In a town the size of Jackson, that's roughly 45,000 people. We have 2 officers to meet the need of a pet population of 45,000. They stay busy, but we have not historically given them the resources they need to be as effective as possible. They're working with short equipment. They're working with less than stellar equipment. They don't complain. They show up and they do what they're supposed to do, and they go above and beyond. And I'm really proud of them. But one of the things that we're doing is community outreach-based social media crowdfunding to provide better equipment. We do have an addendum in our budget for training for this year. No offense, it's not really optional either. We legally are really behind the 8 ball because we are putting ourselves at risk of a lawsuit in a lot of different ways because we have not provided the necessary training for our officers. And so if they misuse the equipment that they have on accident, it opens us up to liability for the replacement cost of a pet, for emotional trauma if we accidentally kill a pet. If they accidentally pepper spray somebody's animal the wrong way, they are not currently certified in chemical capture. Therefore, the list just goes on and on and on. So we are not state or federally licensed as an animal control department. Our shelter is not state or federally licensed as an animal control facility. Never has been. We are in violation of that. So the needed training and everything, that's what that's for, is to get us on track with that. And then also, if you will notice in the budget, that $150,000 chunk that has gone up from the $54,000 it was estimated for the FY20, that is animal services, medical care, and community outreach. All of that comes out of a reimbursement account. It does not cost the city a dime. It is fundraised through our fund and our account with West Tennessee Healthcare. So it's not actually costing the city anything. On paper, it looks like that, and then the line item 903-321, the animal supplies, it's also another $15,000. Those are both reimbursed through the fund. So it's $165,000 of our program that is not coming out of the city's pocket. In the future, once we do get our feet under us after this fiscal year, do intend to cover a lot of the other expenses on there with fundraising. But I think $165,000 is reasonable for the first fiscal year. And that's going to cover all of our medical care for the animals at the shelter. It is also going to cover the city-sponsored spay and neuter program that goes into effect July 1. We are taking over from the West Tennessee Healthcare Foundation, and we are going to widely publicize that. We are going to do boots-on-the-ground effort in our lower-income communities and let them know that there are resources available. These are things that they have not been told. There is a program in effect and has been for the last year or so, but it was not very widely publicized. It was not taken out and presented to them in a usable fashion. And I don't think that it has been very equitable use of resources because the people that need it most did not have access to it. So that's going to be our big focus over the next 6 or 8 months. If we can keep a lot of animals from being born, we can keep them from being a problem for us in the future. So it's a cost-effective solution for everybody.
To follow up on that, you had $150,000 and $15,000 that you said is reimbursable. If I look over at the reimbursements from West Tennessee Healthcare for animal care, we're at $130,000. So not all of that is reimbursable?
Okay, so the revenue that we generate at the shelter goes into a particular account, and Ms. Keck can tell you which account that is. I don't remember the number off the top of my head.
Okay.
So all of our revenue from the shelter goes into that account. Anything that we spend above the revenue that we generate is reimbursed from West Tennessee Healthcare.
Okay. And how many animals, do we keep up with a metric on kind of the cost per animal that we service?
I can provide you an average.
Okay.
The run-of-the-mill healthy animal that's not fixed comes in the front door of our shelter. Legally, we are required to alter that animal, spay or neuter it, before it goes back out.
Right.
That's where our largest expense comes in, because that's going to be based on weight. Obviously, a Rottweiler is going to cost a lot more to alter than a cat, you know.
Right.
So on average, if you take into consideration the differences and the variances in size, weight, and species, you're looking at about $130 total to completely vet an animal. And that's if we're using top-notch products and equipment, which we should be, because that's what the public expects from us. So you're looking at about $130 an animal average. That's for a healthy animal. That doesn't count the ones that come in with heartworms. It doesn't count the ones that come in snake bit, hit by cars, things of that nature.
Right.
That are not terminal illnesses, but do require treatment. Of course, those animals, they ruin the curve for everybody because they end up being $300, $400, $500 an animal to fix. Obviously, that's not in the city's budget. That's why we fundraise.
Okay.
But about $135 an animal is a safe estimate.
So to have the animal altered, 135, what about the keeping cost of each animal?
All of that is included in what we're getting reimbursed from West Tennessee Healthcare. We order all of our food in bulk from local supplier R&J Feed. We have a total food cost for the year of about $9,000. That's as low as it's gonna go unless we're gonna start feeding cardboard. They work with us really, really well. It's a high-quality food at a good price. They cut us a heck of a deal on it. So overall, our food cost is pretty low. And of course, the $135 per animal covers at least 2 sets of vaccines, deworming, heartworm test for dogs, FIV and fetal leukemia test for cats, spay and neuter, and current flea tick and heartworm prevention. So that covers all of that. It's not just.
Where I was getting at is the total cost to operate the facility per animal. If we were to take that out, you know, I'd done some calculations that was, and this prior to your coming on, obviously, you're displaying that you have a good grasp of what's happening here. But it was approximately about $1,000 to $1,200 per animal that we were spending. And that's in salaries, benefits, everything to operate that facility. And so, you know, from a taxpayer perspective, I think we have to look at how are we being more efficient. Those are the kind of data points that I think we have to look at to say, hey, are we being more efficient in the way that we operate the facility to reduce that number? I think from your talking, you're saying you're making strides, significant strides in that direction. I just want us to be aware as we move through the process that we always have the goal of how do we become more efficient and effective in what we're doing.
No, of course. Also, the previous budget for the 475, 786, that was just the animal care center.
Right.
We have combined animal control and the animal care.
That was going to be a follow-up question, yes.
Oh, okay. Continue.
Yeah, so what portion of the budget for the 37,000 is for animal services? Or for for the animal control officers, thank you.
The officers, I could not tell you, I can tell you salaries and benefits total. I can't break it off without doing some number crunching.
Okay.
And tell you,
Yeah,
there's 2 of them, and then there's 6 shelter, like kennel techs.
And where, just to kind of run a track out, where this started was originally when the city took over the Humane Society, our budget was at approximately $250,000. It's grown significantly from year to year, with the expectation that if we were to occupy the other facility, that it would continue to grow and be more than what you presently have. And I think, you know, we just need to get a grasp on what that growth and be able to operate and maintain at least minimal growth as we go through it, than exponential growth that we've seen.
Well, I can tell you the reason that it was $250,000 before is because not a single staff member there was given a benefit of any kind, no insurance. They were making $9 an hour, which personally in this town's not much of a livable wage unless you're gonna, you know, live with your parents as an adult. So we've paid them a livable wage. They now have benefits and insurance, and every employee we have earns those. We could probably cut our overtime a little bit, but the only people working overtime are animal control, and they're dispatched after hours via JPD for emergency calls only. So you're looking at dead animals, injured animals that are in the road, aggressive animals, potential bite risks, prosecutable neglect and cruelty cases. It's not just, hey, there's a cat in my yard that doesn't belong to me. So your overtime rate is pretty stagnant where it's at. Like, it's not gonna change much, and hasn't historically over the last 3 or 4 years. We can get our budget, and I hesitate to say this because I am new. I didn't have any say or vote in the new facility. I think it's fantastic if it ever actually comes to pass. I think it will be wonderful. Where we are right now, year look at, and of course, there were cuts made to our budget, which is fine. But the proposed budget for the overhaul, things we need to do, for this year was a little hair over $700,000. It has gone up because we're serving more animals. When we go open intake, historically, our facility has served 600 animals a year, and that's held pretty steady over the last decade. I pulled the records back when it was still the Humane Society, it was about the same. They're handling about 300 cats and about 300 dogs a year. That is a little under a third of the animals handled in Jackson. Animal control has picked up about 900 animals a year. No, excuse me. Yeah, about 900 animals a year over the last 4 or 5 years. And they've all gone to rabies control, which is contracted through the county. They have a 2-week deadline there, pun intended. The city really doesn't have much of an option except to provide this service. Of course, that is my opinion, based on 12 years worth of talking to the public. They've been pretty disappointed with us historically, that we haven't done more, that rabies control has been the answer to the question. I am happy to make it work at the current facility for as long as you need me to. I don't have an argument with that at all, but we do need to provide the service.
Yeah.
And there's not really going to be much of a way to cut the budget lower than that and still provide the level of service people expect. The one upside, redeeming quality of it, is instead of serving 300 cats and 300 dogs a year, you're looking at a total of closer to 1,800 animals as opposed to 600 animals. So more bang for your buck, I
Yeah,
guess, is a good way to
exactly.
look
And
at it.
and that's where I'm
So
going.
you're
The more
saying-
animals you serve.
Right, so your budget's not going up, your number of animals is going way
Right.
up. So, and historically, since the city took over, we haven't really done community outreach, we haven't done fundraisers. Like, there's a ton of untapped potential there. There's a lot of people in this town that want to get behind this program and really want to support it and want to be involved. They haven't been given the opportunity to do so.
Do you have a fundraising budget for this year?
Not yet, because
Okay.
we're working on that, and then, you know, there's this global pandemic that showed up and kind of ruined everybody's party.
Sure, I know.
Our next one that we have planned right now is Halloween at the farmer's market. We're gonna shoot small for that, since it's one of the first ones we've done in 3-ish years. And then judging on how that goes, we're gonna look at putting our regular schedule back together, that the Humane Society used to do.
Okay.
And would fundraisers come to, like, just come back into revenue for your department, or are they used for a specific service
are-
or?
Gotcha. They are done through the West Tennessee Healthcare Foundation. So they basically go into the general fund for our department. The West Tennessee Healthcare Foundation mission statement for our department is very broad. It's anything basically that benefits the animal care center. So
Okay.
it can't cover salaries and benefits. It can cover pretty much anything else. If we need new vehicles, if we need new, for the new building, like, you know, we go out and really hit the ground running and raise that $400,000 we're missing, you know, build a new building. It can basically be used for anything for our department.
Okay. And you'd mentioned state licensing and how we're working on that. Is there any minimal level of care that we, as a municipality, are required to offer?
You're not required to offer animal services of any kind.
Okay.
There are several of the rural counties around here that don't.
Okay.
I will tell you also from a decade of experience that you would be very remiss to even consider that as a possibility. But if you do choose to enter the ring as a municipal organization for animal welfare, yes, there are minimum requirements. I'll be happy to email them to you if you
Okay.
like.
And that's if we got is that tied to the licensing? Is that, okay. And is there any funding from the state level that comes with that, or is it?
No,
Okay.
you are required,
Just
you
more
are
work.
required to have these to operate, basically.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to just ask you a question about the aggressive dogs. What steps and what training are you kind of looking at? Because I really think that's an avenue we need to address, because they can be adopted out with right training, and just kind of what you're,
If you want to provide me more budget to hire a trainer, I'm happy to do that. As of right now, if it is a bite risk to the community, I will euthanize it.
so you said you were having them in a certain area.
Mhm.
That's just what I was wondering, how are you dealing with them now?
But we don't house them. I tell them no, and they take them to rabies control,
Okay.
because I don't have anywhere I can put them that's safe for the staff or the
Okay, so
or the
when you
public.
get them, you just put them in a different area, and then rabies control.
Oh, no, they don't come in my building.
They don't come at all?
Mm-mm, no.
Okay, all right.
I don't have a single kennel in the building that a 9-year-old couldn't walk up and put his face in, so.
And it is real good about out there. I even called, you tried to help me with the little dog.
Mhm.
And are the local vets Do you get any funding? Because those costs that you just presented, that's really low for everything you said. Are the local vets ever offering the spade or neutering at?
They give us a very discounted rate.
Okay. Are there just certain ones? Because I know it's
There
certain
are a couple
time
that
they
choose
had-
to opt out of it just because it clutters up their practice.
Okay,
And to be quite frank, they're old and don't want to do new stuff,
okay,
which I completely understand. They're in the last few years of their practice and they're
Okay.
winding down to pass it off to somebody else. But all of your big,
or still,
yeah,
okay.
like My Animal Hospital, Deming Vet Services, Jackson Animal Clinic, North Madison, they all
Good.
work with us.
Well, that cost was really, I thought, impressive for
Oh, well, thank
everything you said. It really is.
Yeah, they've been great to us. We can't complain on that front at all.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
One other question on, I think you'd mentioned the salaries and benefits. Did you say that was from adding new positions, or that was more from now paying
It was
a larger
combined.
wage
It was-
and bringing benefits?
Well, from
Or
when
it's
the Humane
combined with-
Society owned it,
Or I guess how we operated when it was just animal care, not when
They've-
animal control got rolled in.
okay, so when animal care, I'm gonna be real frank with you. You had people on that administration that did not know what they were doing, that had never worked in animal welfare, that had never participated in the program, that had never been to a call, never been in the field, and they didn't know what was gonna be required with the promises they made.
Okay.
So they projected a certain budget that was completely unattainable. That's the short version.
Sure. Makes sense. Okay.
Any other questions for Whitney? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Street Department.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
No problem.
So if y'all see, we'll pass street lighting and stormwater because that'll be under engineering, so it's go through street lighting, stormwater, and street department starts below that, page 20 of 40.
So we've seen an increase here in your salaries. Can you kind of talk about where that came from?
Yes, sir, we had 5 people transferred from us from H&S, 3 sweeper drivers and 2 maintenance guys transferring, doing different things.
Yeah,
We
so-
will take care of the.
From solid
inlets.
waste fund to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you manage the sweeper drivers? Is that what, you're managing them
We
out of
do
your
now.
department?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Also, we had picked up 311 guy, so Harry.
Okay.
So there's 6.
And what does he do?
He could be the 311 guy down.
Oh, the 3, so you're
Yeah.
doing that as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
They was a transfer there, yeah.
And what does his job entail?
He's on furlough now.
Oh, okay. So kind of reading through your budget, just high level, majority of the work you guys do yourself. Sometimes if it's a bigger patch, you may have to contract it out to somebody. Is that correct?
The majority of our work, you say, is contracted out.
No, majority you guys do yourself. Is
We
that
do
correct?
all our, just about
All
all
of
our work, except, trees, sometime we have to get a guardrails or something like that. Then we'll have to get some contractor person to do that.
Okay.
For that, we do most of our work.
What is your, I know you and I talked in the past about your needs on equipment and stuff. It looks like we've got in our capital budget, a piece of machinery that's gonna help with some of these potholes and stuff like that.
That was, Mr. Weller there and Alex had got together and, ventured on a pothole thing, would take care of potholes a whole lot better and be a permanent fix, I think. He can do a shit on that
It's,
quick.
it's what they call a, infrared. What we got now is, he may go out and fix, he may turn in a sheet, log in, 300, patch jobs that he did that particular day, but that's just all temporary. where this in here will be a permanent fix.
Okay.
You can actually do a permanent.
So,
fix
so
with
we
it.
can, instead of doing like cold patches and stuff, we can come out there and do, like in the winter, we can come out and do a more long-term patch with
Right,
this
it'll-
infrared. We can heat it up and get a good seal.
Right,
And
we can reheat it.
Yeah.
Which would help us on buying a lot of asphalt too.
that way you're not coming back out in the spring and summer and redoing the job you did. in
Four
the
more
fall.
times in the wintertime.
Right, or multiple times in the winter.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, this is a piece of equipment that could essentially pay for itself in time?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah. Matter of fact, it was, without the truck itself, we saving, if we had bought the truck itself, it would've been, $76,000 more, but we actually getting it for $112 because, we got our own truck that they gonna mount the, unit on.
Okay.
Would that be feasible, mounting it onto the other truck, or?
Yeah, yeah, we done already checked them.
And I think you're probably preaching to the choir, Johnny, on this, but on average, one pothole, how many times does it get filled in a year?
Oh, God.
Just, you know, just gotta give them an idea of how many times we're going to the same hole over and over again.
Probably, I'm gonna say probably 70 or 80 times probably a year.
It, like in a major thoroughfare. So if you had one pop up on Highland, we're gonna be patching it
Right.
about every
Right.
week or more.
Yep.
Especially in the wintertime.
Yeah.
If it's using cold mix, it's just a temporary fix.
Well, when y'all get that machine, feel free to come out to District 8 and try it out a little bit. Okay.
I got a couple spots too, we can test it out.
Just practice on it.
We're gonna be fighting over this machine.
You need to do a sample, come over. Sample it for a week.
Any other questions for Percy or Johnny?
No question.
Guys, we wanna thank y'all.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just looking forward to the machine, and they are doing a fine job. They know my number by heart, and, I'll call up on them and they answer.
On the regular.
Yeah,
Every day.
I would say if we can find another one of those machines, let's get another grant and try to pick up another one.
But as I was saying, guys, thank y'all, cause y'all are the heart of the city. Y'all do a lot of work and, hard work out there in that heat, but appreciate y'all. Let y'all workers know we appreciate the hard work they do.
These guys work in the heat, the rain, the
Oh,
snow, and it doesn't matter.
At night and day.
Yeah, so let them know that we
12-hour
appreciate them.
service.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
y'all, appreciate it.
All right, Mr. Chandler, engineering.
Thanks for the short
See, if
session.
you got me at light, if you got me at light stuff, I wouldn't be so.
I know.
He's got one plate chicken salad.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Rodney said you were mad at me earlier, so I skipped you.
It's okay, I brought the interpreter. Little hearing impaired.
Mayor, I'm sorry, before we move on, just quickly.
Good
maybe-
afternoon to all of y'all, and just want to say one thing right off the bat. I don't want to be out of order, but I believe it's important for me to say this. This is a great place to be. It just is. Y'all are not going to give me everything we ask for. I understand that. At home, when I don't have the money, guess what? I do without it. Or I save my money, do it later. So we're okay with all that, and just to give you a brief overview of what we do, I know I've met some of you I haven't. I got here in 2004, we had two garages. One was called Public Safety, one was just City of Jackson Garage, I believe. I didn't understand what public safety meant that day, but I have learned. We had 15 employees at that point, and we had two guys actually, that pumped fuel. That's what they did, pump fuel and play games on video. And I thought, what are you doing? Anyway, so we brought all that together into one shop over on Canalco, and it's a beautiful shop. And we got down there for a while, we had 6 guys, including me. Things happened, people came, people went. But one of the things that struck me as soon as I did my first walkthrough of Mr. Johnny Williams was this guy right here. this guy, I hired him right out of high school. I really did. Had a private business on Airways. We worked together 18 years. And now we've been working for the city for 16, I think, 17, whatever it is. And we, with Lynn Henning and others, we have developed a great team, I think. We've got a great team. We've got 8 mechanics, Gary and myself, and 1 clerk that works parts and the one that does what he has to do. And I am happy to say, I used to say we work on everything except the city helicopter. I can't say that anymore. I got a call one Saturday afternoon from Sergeant Jackie Benton, said, we need your help. We've had a hard landing. Well, heck, what I know about a helicopter? Never even seen it, really. And she said, it's across a big ditch. You're gonna need a crane. Well, heck, I didn't know what I needed. Had no idea what it weighed or anything. But the bottom line is, we went out there with street department's help, and we got it out of where it crash landed or hard landed. We realized it crash landed. Everybody survived. The officers were hurt, I think, a broken leg. And it actually went to the city garage. Now, we didn't work on it much, but we did secure it. But I remember very well what Gary and I were wondering, oh, wait a minute. If this thing quit running, how come? I mean, you gotta have, there's a few things you gotta have, or I don't care what kind of engine it is, it's gonna stop. And I don't know if they ever figured it out. I don't know, but that was one of the many experiences that we've had. I've also, I'm happy to say, our tallest fire truck is 104 foot in the bucket. 104 feet. Has anybody been up in a bucket like that? I have, I'm telling you. I have a lot of respect for firemen, because when they're up in that bucket, we were up there, we didn't have anything going on. We're just up there, and it's a little windy, so it's rocking a little bit. But you get up there with a nozzle, pressure washing, and fire, and wind, and all that, it'll get your attention. Now, I will say my partner hasn't been there yet, but he'll get there.
Ain't going.
But anyway, so we, over the years, I've learned how important public safety is. The only thing I knew about a fire truck was that's who you call when you have a house on fire. But I have learned a lot, that we have. In Gary's background, certainly wasn't fire trucks either. Police cars, that was nothing totally new, but fire trucks and dump trucks and backhoes and leaf machines. And our job, the way I understand it, is to support all these other great departments, and we have a great relationship with all of them. We never have asked them to help us with something. They don't just readily do it, and we do our best to do that. But we're glad to be here. Yeah, I need another 100,000, Mayor, but I'm not gonna cry about it. Anyway, that's the big picture of what we do. We do our best to support all these other departments so they can do their job safely. Any questions about what we do?
I see we had some changes to salaries going to other departments.
Sir?
I see there was some changes to salaries,
Charge other departments.
decreasing salaries, and it looks like going to other departments.
Charging their time when they work on vehicles.
If I understand the
Okay.
question, like on, let's see, line 119, I believe it is.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Here's the way that works. I didn't set this up, but the way it was when I got here is whatever we do on anybody, I don't care whose vehicle it is, and sometimes it's not even a vehicle. Sometimes it's generators or whatever it is. We charge our rate of $20.50, however long we work on it.
Okay.
And the thinking was, what I was told anyway, the thinking was that would help the departments potentially take better care of their equipment if they're having to pay somebody to fix it.
Okay.
But we're only charging $20.50. It's been like that, I don't know, what, 2 or 3 years probably. Anyway, that's what that is.
Okay. When you work on another department's
We charge them
vehicle, you charge
$20.50 an hour. Yes, sir.
Is that all departments?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
If it's a vehicle or anything, and like I said, sometimes it's not even a vehicle, it's a generator
Okay.
or
Or a
a
helicopter?
trailer, you know.
Okay.
And matter of fact, I failed to mention this, when I first got here, and I'm just reporting the news, I'm not complaining, Mayor. We had 425 pieces that we knew about. That's what we knew. We're up to almost 900 now. Now, that's everything from a chainsaw to that 104-foot ladder truck, and everything in the middle, police cars, you name it. If it's got an engine on it, and some that don't, trailers. So the challenge for us, and I don't mind telling you, this is a fact. The challenge for us is, it's hard to be an expert on 900 pieces. we've got one pro patcher, but we have become expert. And I'm sure if you buy a new one, we'll learn it too. But that's a little bit of a challenge with all the different brands. Parts availability is a challenge because of all the different brands. But we just do what we can. Keep them out of our building, the way I look at it.
All right, any other questions for Rodney?
I'm sorry?
So there's an increase in computer and IS services. Is that just technology? Are we instituting any new technology there
Oh,
with your
on
daily
the,
operations?
what line is that?
43310.
255. 255.
Yes. We've been using a software, garage operating software, and the name of it is RTA. And that was developed by Ron Turley with UPS. So as you can imagine, with anything with UPS, they're first class. We purchased that when I first got here in 2004. We had virtually no records. No parts records, no records. We had a hard file, and sometimes information would get there and sometimes it wouldn't. We implemented that in the fall of 2004. It started out, you know, like a lot of this software, it started out as pretty cheap. I think we paid, I don't know, $7,000 or $8,000 for it initially. And then the maintenance fee was $1,500 a year. Well, every year they keep going up. And some years I just don't pay it. But it finally came down to the fact that they were going on the cloud, and I will say this, it is fantastic. It works great even before the cloud, but now, the things they've implemented, it's updated every day. We also tie that into our fuel system. So when somebody gets fuel out at the fuel island, we know exactly how many miles are on it, and we do that through the RTA software and the Fuel Master fuel system. They link together, works great. It's not cheap, but it works great. And we're dispensing about 400,000 gallons of gasoline a year, and about 86,000 of diesel. And we've just taken on DEF, diesel exhaust fluid, for any late model diesel truck. It's all part of that clean burn technology. We just added a dispenser for that. So it gives us really, I think, really accurate record of what we're doing.
That DEF, the getting all that DEF in a container and dispenser is gonna save us some money too. From
Absolutely.
Buying it by the
Absolutely.
gallon.
We were paying almost $4 a gallon for DEF in a jug, now it's $1.40.
Right.
And not only that, we have a whole lot better record keeping. You know, it just, we bill them when they use it. Before, we'd give them a 2.5 gallon jug, we didn't know when they'd use it exactly. So it was gonna reduce our costs and make it more accountable.
Okay.
Appreciate y'all allowing us to do that, by the way. That saves, I'm telling you, for us, on our side of the fence, DEF was a pain. It just was. This is a good thing. I appreciate that. Anyway, anything else? I need that 100, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for listening.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to engineering. You had a question, Paul?
Well, and I think, Mr. Chandler can answer it. It was on 88.
Yeah.
I think we kind of popped down there. I know that street department had handled some of that previously. Maybe we just start there. Can you give us quickly, I know as I've watched previous budget meetings, we've kind of set out, per the previous administration, that it costs $500,000 a year to keep up on this ADA lawsuit. Where are we at on it this year?
That
It-
would actually be Johnny and them to discuss the progress. I'm kind of doing it, being utilized as an audit or a backup check toward the end of each year. but
Okay.
Yeah, he's already gone.
He may have walked out.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
already gone.
I do know, we discussed their efforts in terms of linear miles of sidewalk that they were trying to average. They were focusing on that in years past. However, the ramps at the intersections were getting behind on. And I think initially across the country, that was the primary focus, was getting those. And you have to get credit for one ramp, you have to replace one ramp. And they've really honed in on that this year. I think they're gonna meet their target this year when they haven't in the past. And so I know they've made some headway on that. I put, if y'all wanna, I'll quickly go through, on page 8, which is kind of, we bypassed that. I am managing that site development grant, that, is out at the industrial park at 223. And, kind of passed that over earlier, but, if y'all have any questions about that, I can explain some on that. And then I start on page 22 after that. I have the,
Hey, can you give us the line,
on
number for the
page,
line?
on page 8, it's, 41901. It's right after general government, that site development grant. That's something that the chamber applied for, and I kind of, it started out as I think they had anticipation for managing it. It's got to do with, a state, interstate access road, to connect to 223 near the TDOT building, at that industrial park land. And, TLM's currently doing the design for the roadway, and it won't get constructed out of this grant, it'll just be designed. And then we're supposed to do some tree clearing out there just to kind of prep the site for, hopefully some recruitment. So we got that one on page 8, and then on page 22, really starts, with street lighting, then stormwater management, which is Wendy, who does the MS4 permit with the state. Then it skips a page to page 25, where you have the traffic sign department, traffic signal department, engineering department, and stormwater operations department. So if y'all have any questions on any of those, be happy to discuss any of those with you.
Can, the JEA streetlight lease, I guess we saw a reduction in that last year over the previous by 10%, which is pretty significant in the amount that we pay for those.
That budget is a best guess by my department. We've had years where we underestimated and went greatly over, then made adjustments, and then the following year come in pretty good. We have made some savings in terms of putting LED lights up. I think that helps with our energy cost. But overall, it just kind of depends on what projects come online and our lease approach that we utilize with them. So that's our best guess. I looked at how we were tracking this year, and it looks like on energy we may be down some, and so we made that adjustment. But on the lease itself, payments that we're making, which is the finance for the amount of lights that they put up, was going up. And so I've made some adjustments both ways, but I think we turned in under, was able to save some.
Stormwater materials for jobs, where does that come from?
Building materials?
Yeah, like, you know, if you have, I know that we have people that are salaried to go out and make repairs on things, but, you know, if we have a repair, do we budget for those materials, or?
We do. We don't have a plan enough ahead that we know what all materials and what projects we're gonna have for the whole year. But we budget in the building materials line item at 439-11400. And that's where all of the materials that would go out on the job and stay on the job. So if we were putting in a new box structure or laying a new run of pipe, then the pipe itself and the box itself would be purchased out of that line item. As opposed to like tools and things that they might purchase to utilize on job after job, we would purchase that out of the tools line item.
Kind of a question about the GIS mapping that is necessary for us to really understand the scope of our stormwater issue. Where do we see that in the timeline? You know, as we just building on that as we go, or we?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I'm interested in doing that for all of our infrastructure. I mentioned to the mayor about the striping. I've got a nice data-driven layout for paving now. I have to do a certain amount of sign replacement each year, and we've got an asset management tool for signs that tell us how many signs we have to replace next year to maintain retroflectivity. Striping, I don't currently have, but what I'd like to do this year is go out and survey all our striping, give us a rating of, you know, where we're at citywide, how many miles of striping we have, so that I can determine about how much we need each year to maintain it. Stormwater is a really challenging thing. I mean, if you can see either end of the pipe and I can measure it and see its condition, I could get you an estimate. There is so much underground that we don't know what's there, so much underground that we don't have access to even, you know, look at it to see. And so it's just it's a lot across the city that it's going to take time. Now, we do have the framework now. We could start on working on any map because we have GIS. We can create the layer. We have the ability, or we're learning more and more to set the layers up and start tracking it. But to utilize, we have currently 9 guys. We have 2 on furlough in Stormwater, but they're busy constantly working on the projects at hand. So to shut down and start mapping is a whole nother effort. And then like I said, we just have so many challenges. You have to pull every grade up to even get down in there to look, and then a lot of times you can't see once you get down there that it may run and tie to another box in the street and then run 300 foot up the street that you can't really have access to. But yes, I'm interested in getting every bit of infrastructure mapped and rated and get us a data-driven approach to solving these issues. That's what you've got to have.
I think that's the only way we get out of it.
Huh?
That's the only way we can start
That's
to
the
dig
only
our way
way.
out.
That's right. In years past, I've took some preliminary efforts where we tried to identify every pipe that was over a certain size, because typically, once you get to a 36, 48, 60-inch pipe, the building materials, if we chose 5 projects this year of 60-inch or larger pipes, then we obviously couldn't do very many projects. So what we try to hone in on in our department is the smaller size pipes, but then start developing a capital plan for larger pipes and even bridges that we could work on and start planning for.
Okay.
Outside of stormwater and engineering, if y'all have any question on traffic sign, traffic signalization is Scott's area as well.
What do we have, I guess, remaining from our capital budget from last year for signalization? We had a school zone or something. Did we get all that taken care of?
We got the school zones in. The contractor for the signal rebuild at Harts Bridge that's going to roll into next year. They have a lot of delay for signal items. There's a lot of lag time in the ordering of those products and getting them in. So we'll
Okay.
just continue those efforts.
And then as far as, Mr. Chairman, is the appropriate time to discuss kind of his projections on the street resurfacing plan for this year?
Yeah.
So can you kind of give us a view of what the amount that you have carrying over in addition to the potential state funding and how much that would?
So our goal this year was to start the 4-year plan of 25% of the streets that we were rated 1 and 2 were streets from our drive-through. We're on target for that. Y'all passed a budget of 3.75. I think by the time we did some streets early on, then we issued this project, this last contract for $2.3 million. I think all total, you're going to wind up with about 2.6 that would get us the 25% this year. So we
Okay.
come in way under budget for this year, which
That's
is
good.
good. Looking at starting the next round or the next 25%, I understand we have $1.5 million. So we'll develop a project around those funds. Now, obviously, if it took 2.6 to get 25% this year, I'm not sure percentage-wise where we'll wind up next year, but, you know, we'll develop that project around that funding amount. And I'm sure people understand with COVID and the money restraints that we have, that we're gonna probably lag 6 months on our plan anyway, so.
I would commend you on the work that you did in mapping out those streets. And I think that's the approach we need to take towards all of our infrastructure. You know, and I would support, you know, funding. I know right now we're in a really tight spot, but in the future, I'd support funding to expand that program so that we can get a grip on what the issue is and start putting a plan in place to take care of it.
I agree.
All right, any other questions for Scott? All right, thank you so much. All right, Recreation and Parks, and all that goes with it.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Appreciate
Good
this
afternoon.
opportunity. If you have questions for us, with me is Mark Mingledorf, who handles it's not on your list, but he handles athletic and also manages Westwood Community Center. Ms. Smith handles T.R. White. Ms. Bridget Parham handles South Jackson and Bemis Community Center, as well as some of the programming within our administration budget. So at this time, I'll entertain any questions that you may have. And also, Mark handles the tennis center and the tennis complex.
As we're planning for programming, I know a lot of it has been disrupted, right, with COVID-19. And so when you're looking at a summer programming, our fiscal year's kind of right in the middle. So I guess, is this reflective of, if we don't have those programs, but anticipation of what will ramp back up in, I guess, the summer of 2021?
Yes.
Is it-
Let me say about the increase that you see in the salary line, that's exactly, this is the first administration that has actually asked for a definitive salary for our summer camp programs. I've had to budget the summer camp, particularly at Westwood. Mr. Smith has his own summer camp program. And as you can see in 2019, what it was, so we looked at that and gave the mayor the exact figure that we need for our summer camp. That's why the salary line has increased. You may not be aware, but I am the major summer employment agency for youth to keep them off the street. There's no more federal dollars like the CEDAR program. Now, we do work with the juvenile center. We hire a lot of those kids to help us out, but they are employed by through that juvenile program through Southwest. But most of my summer youth workers are high school kids at Westwood and at T.R. White. And we do that to help our program to be successful, but also give them the opportunity. Many of them, it's their first job, and we want them off the street.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Blight, good afternoon. Line 292, we have 59,000 for security that we haven't had this year and the year before.
For
Just
whatever
curious.
reason, security had been put in park maintenance budget. This is the company, Max Guard, who has the contract, who locks. We open the parks. They lock them up 365 days. They lock the gates, they clear the parks out, they check the restrooms. And previously, there were some parks that they were not checking, but now they do check. We used to leave Liberty Garden open, but some guy was living in it for a period of time. And with the new Bemis Memorial, we lock it. So they lock all of the bathrooms and clear the parks out every night.
Is that just kind of a clerical item, putting the
Moving it
expense-
from park, I don't know why I've been in park maintenance for
See,
those
it was-
years.
Park maintenance was underneath Recreation and Parks, so
Yeah.
we moved park maintenance out, it's municipal maintenance technically now, so it's its own department, so
Yeah.
the parks items need to come underneath the parks
Yeah,
budget.
so they shifted it over, which made sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Tony, you know, you and I have talked about some of the things going on out south.
Yes.
in District 1. We talked about the cracks and the fissures in the tennis courts at Melissa's Park. Also, we talked about the possibility of removing the asbestos shingles roofing shingles on top of that and putting a metal roof on that. Also, we talked about maybe adding a pavilion at the new Memorial Park there in Bemis. What are we looking at?
We have those in our 5-year plan, but this year we did have to do the tennis courts at Melissa's. Mark handles that. and
Okay.
he can address that, but the capital got taken out, which we understand. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I'd like to have $1 million, but I understand the financial
Well, if I had it in my pocket,
situation
I'd
of
give
the
it to you,
department.
so you
But,
could do
We
that.
try to be reasonable and
Sure.
practical, and it's no need of making a big fuss if you don't
Right.
get what you want this year. You know, you just
Yeah.
move on and continue to try to do with what you got.
Right.
And eventually, you know, it'll have to be taken care of because the people out there do want to play tennis.
Yeah.
So,
And I-
it's
and
been
I was
neglected.
thinking about putting a metal roof on that pavilion at Melissa's Park. That would probably last a lot longer than those
Sure.
asbestos
There are a couple of
shingles.
more pavilions that we've looked at Cypress Grove. There's got to be a
Right.
roof on that, and that was in the capital. So, you know, we'll bring it back up when
Yeah.
funds become more
It's
available.
probably a lot of money up front, but in the long run,
Yes.
save us some money as well.
Mark can address the courts.
And I don't have that with me, but I'm sure that I had that on the capital for this year for
Okay.
doing Melissa's courts. We knew they were in bad shape. We know they've needed resurfacing for
Right.
a long time, and we had that in there. and I
It was,
know-
it was on the schedule for this coming year
Yeah,
until.
that's what, I thought that was right,
It
but
was.
I didn't want to, I knew it was bad, and we asked for that, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get that.
And they're not cheap to.
Oh,
But
absolutely
once we go
not.
to the post-concrete,
Yeah,
that will not crack. That's what's at the new complex.
Mm-hmm.
And, we put some at Conger, and they don't crack.
And I think that I even asked for, to resurface them this year. That would buy us a little time.
Yeah.
When you have the asphalt, you're gonna get the cracks back. But that
Without a
would
doubt.
buy us some time, and then hopefully getting the post-tension concrete a few years now, hopefully things would have been better. So that was kind of the plan.
Okay.
Knowing this year was gonna be rough.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Black, I know there was, maybe last year sometime, there was some fundraising that was looking at, I think Ms. Kirk was working on as well. Did that, or like to deal with Cypress Grove or some other special projects, did any of that pan out?
Oh, I remember we were talking about,
I think we were reaching out to business
that was for.
local businesses.
For Charlene Mercer.
It was the adopted park.
Adopt a
Park,
Park
okay.
program. That's still on.
Okay.
It's through Jackson Beautiful. We want to work closely with them.
Okay.
But this pandemic put a lot of things in hold.
So that's still
Oh, that's still on,
ongoing?
yes.
Okay.
Speaking of Shirley Mercer, great job with 7 pillars.
Yeah, it will be completed hopefully by the middle of July. We've got everything in place except for the concrete, which that wouldn't get done this fiscal year. And so we're going to look at, in between here and the next budget, rolling what's left over. We're meeting with the sod guy tomorrow because by it sitting so long, the rain has put some ruts in it, so they'll have to do a lot of dirt work, and then they will give us a time frame for sodding it. And then we've got the Plex done, the people that are gonna be on the Plex, we've got some additions done. I got some recommendations earlier today, and we've got that plugged in, and they'll be able to put them on there also. So it's gonna be a beautiful thing.
Where do we stand on the dog park completion?
Dog park is actually completed, and Kirk made it, I know I was out there Friday, they had got all of the fixtures in place, and they wanted the concrete to set. I don't know if they got the solar lights up, if they got them up yet, Kirk? This week, and then after that, we're gonna clean it up, and it can be open. We'll have a soft opening. Now, for as an official grand opening, the Board Foundation always want to be present. And if you don't know, Mr. Board is also head of the university system. So I talked to his office. I told him whenever he gives us an available date, that's the day we will plan a big mass grand opening. Everybody bring their dogs, and Mayor can give a speech and all that. I told him that's on Mr. Board. And, I know his schedule's busy, but I'm sure he has a jet. He can fly down and fly back. So it's probably after this week, we'll put out in our Facebook that you can go to the dog park. Got to be some cleaning up done.
Can you talk real quick about, in terms of recreation, I know in years past, we had employees that handled purely soccer, maybe purely baseball. Can we consolidate some of that where, because it's so seasonal?
He handles all of it. We do. They don't just handle soccer.
Okay.
It handles athletics. He can address how they handle all of that.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
We have 4 full-time employees in the athletics department. And all of us do programming, but also remember too that athletics also operates the Westwood Center, manages it, the tennis center. We're all doing all of that, so we're not just doing one sport or anything like that. You know, there are 2 soccer seasons. Angie kind of handles the soccer, but she also helps with the center, helps with other programs, and that's, you know, everybody does that and everything. You know, nobody's just doing one sport or anything.
Okay.
like that.
And we were getting ready for the spring soccer program, and it hit, and we had to refund people's money back. But
We had just started the season. I think we're in the first couple of days of the
First days,
season
yeah.
when we had to shut down.
Are we still making the allocation to Jaws? Are we letting them advertise? Are we selling advertisements out there?
I would stop.
Yes, but no, yes, sir.
Right. I thought we stopped.
So what are our plans for after school? I mean, I know about everything
Well,
going on. Are we gonna
Bridget
open
can
back up?
address that. We were supposed to have started registration for after school. And that, when the school system goes back, we will have an after-school program at Westwood.
Will, okay.
Whenever the school system lets us know that they're going to start and the start date. But we haven't registered yet, but we will register once we know a definitive date.
Once we know a date that the school system will get back into session, we will do a registration. But we will also reduce the number of children that we'll have in after-school program.
And TRI to open back up also with after-school hours.
Yes.
And I would like to, well, I guess we all need to work with you, because for the last 2 years, I think we've had to cancel our basketball.
Well, some of the
League.
reasons is because of not participation.
Yes, I'm saying, yeah, not us, but I'm saying if we
yeah.
can kind
It's
of,
not-
I mean, normally we can kind
Every
of turn
middle
kids
school
away.
now has,
Grammar
every
school.
middle school has a varsity team, a JV team, a JV team. So all the kids that used to play in our program, now they can play on a school team. Marketing,
They have a 6th grade.
6th grade, yeah.
JV and then a varsity.
Then a varsity.
So we actually going through the churches.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to go through the churches to create basketball teams and.
And Mr. Smith does Gilliam League too, down at the fields, and we had to cancel that this year.
Yeah, I know, that's kind of, well, thank y'all, I mean, y'all do a great job, but, you know,
Appreciate y'all's support.
y'all continue doing what you're doing, but like I said, a lot of parents, I was complaining, but we let them know y'all do your part also.
Yeah, and
You
we
gotta
did.
get up there and sign them up.
We appreciate the mayor. We discussed, he did ask our opinion about trying to do a summer camp, and I know the county's doing one, but I'll just be honest and tell you, I go by what the CDC and the medical people say, and if you get a kid that's sick, you gotta shut down, go out to shut down, then you might be looking at, if they trace it back to the center. In most major cities, we had a webinar the other week with the other people through our trade organization. Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, no summer. I consider Jackson a major city. None of them did camps. And it was just one summer.
Councilman Dodd talked about the after-school program. It's something that my constituents have really, I know you guys have people literally camping out to get into the program. Is that something that we as a city need to consider expanding?
Yes, what we looked at and what we were talking about doing is, not all schools have an after-school program. And so we were going to approach the school system about utilizing those facilities that don't have after-school programs. Let us run a program out of there for the after-school. That's still on the table. We got a new superintendent. I've met with him. I've kind of shared with him some of the thoughts on that, and he's pretty amicable toward that. He's a pretty sharp guy, and he agrees with that. Now, what we will be doing is increasing our rates for summer camp, and we've been very cheap. We've run very good programs, but we got to increase our fees, and the parents will understand. It won't be as expensive as the schools and the other things, but it'll be close to it. We do have people, and we have now started online. The mayor had encouraged us to do online registration, and it, you know how you are, your old head.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's less headache, you know, so it's been good. So that's what we're going to.
We're
move forward
getting
to.
away from the camping out program.
Yeah, camping out front, people want that. Just one other thing in terms of that, at some point in the future, when things get really good, the city will really need to look at upgrading facilities to be competitive with our peer cities. I always tell you that. And it's hard to compete with a Franklin or whatever for facilities when you got a Nissan and the Titans living in Franklin. The money's there, and this is the richest county. But, you know, what we can do is look at our facilities and begin to think about that long-term building facilities, recreation facilities. That's something to really think about.
Quick question, Tony. Shirley Mercer Park, the walking trail over there, did we ever address that cracking?
Yeah, what is happening is that Lauren and I, and county, the governor has allocated the money, but he put it on hold. The TDEC went to a 2-year grant cycle. This year was the grant cycle to be rewarded. They're supposed to release that money, supposedly, but he's frozen it, but they are planning on the training set. You have to attend the training. It's going to be virtual. Sometime in June, they're supposed to give us a date, and we're going to apply. I tend to try not to put the city in tough situations. You've got two types of grants that you can get. You can get a RTP trail, which is Recreation Trail Program, or you can get you can get local parks and recreation fund, which you have to do 50%. The RTP grant is 80-20, and that's what we use for Liberty. So that's what we were going to apply for Shirley and Mercer. 80-20, try to at least, you know, save some money, because if you get one of those other ones, you can get up to 500,000, but you're gonna have to pay 250. And this one, you just pay 20%. So if it's like, I had it looked at, it was about a $200,000 job, so we would have to pay just the 20% of the 200,000.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions? Recreation and Parks. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have our newly formed municipal maintenance. Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Those of y'all who hadn't met Kirk Smith, our municipal maintenance director. Park maintenance in your book.
Okay, so it is still park maintenance.
Well, in the book, it's still park.
Okay.
Till today.
But that's what we did, I guess, at the beginning of the term, where a lot of everything that was truly maintenance, municipal maintenance was housed under park
Yeah.
maintenance. Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha.
Can you speak to the increase in your regular salaries, what we're looking at there? We've got about a 5% increase. You taking on additional employees, or you had some furloughed?
We didn't have any furlough. There's been some slight increases in salaries.
Increases in salaries, okay.
We added 2 employees in the last.
I did have, I had one employee that retired quite some time ago, and I did replace him finally, so that would make the difference. I was holding off on replacing him for budget reasons.
Okay. What, the JEA streetlight lease, I see this again, I know we had it in, can you just talk about what the money we're seeing here?
Those are the streetlights in the parks that are owned by
Okay.
JEA, and it's a lease fee on that.
Okay.
It's kind of shot in the dark, haha.
Yeah.
Is the cost.
I guess, their lease program, two different, they categorize it and bill us two separate.
For parks and for
Yeah.
all other streets?
Yeah, for-
Ye-
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So, some of the lighting in the parks is owned by the city, and we have our own meters, and some of the parks has JEA lighting.
Okay. So $50,000 is maintenance, repair and maintenance supplies for all repairs in the city?
That's it.
Man,
That's,
Yes and no, right? So our municipal buildings have repair and maintenance repair and maintenance line items, so this is just for anything not designated for.
it's not within a municipal facility?
no,
You're right.
no, sir, that's all for the parks.
Okay.
Even though, I'm now city maintenance, but we're gonna continue to monitor and maintain the parks as we always have.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
Any additional questions for Mr. Smith? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
You got groundskeeping?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council.
Good afternoon.
There's also a department that we broke out on its own department. They also took on some employees from solid waste fund as well, and some responsibilities as well. We got Frank Woods and JD here that can tell you all about that.
Frank, so you guys took on, as the mayor was just speaking about, a number of properties that that Health and Sanitation was previously mowing,
Yes, sir.
and it looks like you've been able to keep your budget down, even with taking on those additional responsibilities.
Well, a lot of it was kind of just a shot in the dark because we don't really have anything to go on.
Yeah,
So we just kind of tried to figure as best as we could what we thought it might take. But yeah, because we got the vacant lot mowing and the leaf machines.
okay.
So it's up and down.
Do you guys presently have any vacant positions?
Yes. We've
Ha-
got 3 full-time positions and a couple of part-time positions.
Okay, and maybe that's where I'm seeing, when I look at the salary and benefit sheet, there's the same employee number for 5 different salaries, and I'm assuming those are probably just a placeholder.
All right, any questions for groundskeeping? Man,
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right. Civic Center.
So we had some increases in salaries. Can you talk to those?
We've got 9 furloughs
Okay,
for our department.
so 9 furloughs.
And I will say that salary number probably needs to be revisited. We had some folks retire kind of mid-budget year last year and come back part-time, so that probably needs to be revisited to get a more accurate.
So per the
Number for
mayor's
that.
proposal for a $39,000 reduction, you would probably seek to reduce your salary.
It could come from there, but I've got a sheet right here. I don't know if you all have it, but I've got copies of the lines that I pulled from to get to that 39,000.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Under the notes column right there, that's the amount that I pulled from.
So this is just the Civic Center?
That's correct.
Okay, so the budget that we have presently is 717,000. The budget that you have proposed is 792.
So the one, when we got the first initial, submit us what you think it's gonna take. So we submit that, and then a new number came back to me with a variance to try to go to 0 on every variant. So then I met the 0 variance on every line item and then resubmitted with the 39,000 reduction. So the one that I received was 764, 461, 14 to try to keep that number. And so with that 792 that you see, the 39,000 gets you to the 764.
Yeah, I see the 39,000. Okay. I think there's maybe some confusion here.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that 716 number.
Yeah, we've got a total, 717, 028.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that.
So it looks like, Mr. Chairman, looks like we're looking, the budget that's before us is the budget that's included in our packet, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm trying to reconcile this with that.
Do you want to address utilities, maybe? Could we start?
That's kind of where I tried to take the majority of it from, especially with this downtime that we've got. We're not having any events. We're not running both chillers. So I'm hoping we'll be 2 months ahead.
Did you just kind of prorate that per month and?
I tried, especially with the 2 months where we know, well, since March 20th,
Okay.
we know nothing's going on, so.
Till,
I guess we're looking at a difference of 75,000 in what we've got on the proposed budget in the packet as opposed to the 792.
Yeah, that's,
where is, what page is that? What?
yeah, that was the last one that I received from revenue with the mayor's proposal of the 39, which would come out to 764, 461.
Which was the
I received that on
actual
529.
from
That
fiscal
would
year
be the,
19.
yeah, that'd be the FY '21 proposed.
So you're
I
proposing
think we've got some
717?
Well, that was the FY '20 estimate,
Uh-huh.
was the 717. And some of the numbers that I got back were actually higher than what I submitted. So I was a little confused about that, especially, like I said, that salary line item probably needs to be revisited because I'm sure there's some stuff in there, especially with the furlough. And I've went from 13 employees to 9.
Okay.
So it was a matter of not just getting people, but getting the right people. So we're able to do quite a bit more with less. So the number I worked off of was the FY '21 proposed budget.
Which, according to your proposal, is 792,000.
I've got 764, 461. The 792, if you minus the 39 proposed by the mayor of a reduction, that gets you to 764, 461.
Okay, so you subtracting the 39?
That's right.
Okay,
And the sheet that I gave you shows the
okay.
line items that I pulled from to
Okay.
get the 39.
Your repair and maintenance, are you adjusting that also for the month that you're allowing?
That's right.
or that was closed? And secure, I guess all of this, really most of this is for closure.
That's right. And security, there's also a revenue side to security that offsets
Okay,
that expense line. We bill that out every time we have an event. We include that on the invoice.
okay.
And when we have events, Are we charging set rates now, or is it still okay?
Yeah, we've kind of looked at I talked to the other building managers and with the mayor and Alex about, how do we try to generate some revenue for these public facilities, and the equipment was kind of one of the ways that we could do it. They've been charging 75 cents for chairs for I don't know how long. So going up $1 to $1 to rent chairs and $6 for tables, that's pretty accurate across the board now with all of our buildings, so that, if you wanted to rent the Civic Center or the fairgrounds, you're getting the same equipment list at the same price. So just that small increase will help, but that's the only changes.
Have you sent that, like, to your people like the Symphony or different places, so they're already aware of that?
That's right.
Adjusting?
We send them an addendum,
Okay.
and so they select what equipment they want. They total it themselves, and we go back and check it, and they sign off of it
And
to
that
say this
includes
is what we want.
lighting,
That includes
sound,
everything. Mhm.
Okay.
Most of that stuff is contracted out. We don't provide a lot of sound and lights. Whatever's fixed to the building is,
Okay.
they usually bring in their own stuff.
With the repairs that were being done a few years ago, maybe it was just a year ago, to the risers and the seating, what's the status on that?
We still have quite a bit, of course, that needs to be done under structure with the risers. And, the big thing it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction, I think, for the risers on the seats, because they were all duct taped, and the pageant was about to come in, and, they wanted it to look nice for the pageant. So we spent the upfront money on getting the seats done, but, now it's really the guts that need to be. And I've tried to spread that out over, tried to do a section at a time each budget year. So you're looking at you could probably do another 150,000 on the understructure of the risers over, 5-6 years, stretching it out. Each section could be up to 25,000 per section, depending on the damage. But that's all capital stuff that I'll request that for capital instead of operating.
Mr. Chairman, can you provide any direction on the discrepancies between the budget?
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to find out right now.
Okay.
The number that's in the budget ordinance that you're considering for the civic center, is $717,029. So that's where we need to end up at. Just trying to follow all of that, a little confusing, but, granted, this process has been was disruptive this year, and regret the confusion this one little piece of the process created for everybody, but, the number where we need to end up at for the civic center, to reconcile with the ordinance that you're considering is the 717, not 792, 764. Mayor, I'm not sure, I don't want to put words in your mouth or speak for you when you were proposing these reductions, but it appears you were trying to get the budget request for next year back to what was estimated this year's level. It's kind of a zero increase budget. That's what appears to be what we were trying to accomplish. So.
You're correct.
We can work with Koch to.
But I think we're right on too, if we look at, the salaries that on Tasha's sheet compared to what we have here in the benefits, that'll take us down, $30,000 right there, so.
Just kind of a cursory view, it looks like the majority of the money is in salary and benefits.
Yeah, about 26,700 in the salary, and then roughly, four, so you get right at 30,000 in the salary benefits.
And they said he lost 4, so that's 4.
And this was an inherited budget for me when I first got there. I was transferred down there, and it was over $1 million when I first got there. So we've really tried to work hard to get this thing and going to get to that 717, I feel like that's feasible. I mean, I think we can make it work. And just from here on out, keep trying to do what we can to keep it there and make it less.
I just see a difference of $7,792 after your $39,000. And I would think your salaries would account for that from going from 13.
That was the line I was just thinking probably should be revisited to make sure that we were on target with
I
that.
would think that would probably.
Yes, we can get there and we'll work on that. We solved most of the problem right there.
Mhm. I've got Omen as well, so if you have any questions about Omen Arena, that's falls under my job duties as well.
All right, so just so we're working on the same numbers, the budget that we have for Omen is $150,642. That's what we spent. That's for the Legends Museum and what we spent in FY.
Yeah, 150, 642, 73.
Okay.
And salaries, is there one employee or
There's one,
part-time employees?
that's
or-
right, one part-time employee. That's Bobby Gregson's salary. He's the energy conservationist, but his salary comes out of Omen Arena. His office is at Omen, so that's where that comes from. And he's part-time.
What does he do?
He's on furlough at the moment.
Well, I'm assuming he could come off furlough, so what does the energy conservationist do at Omen?
Finding ways to conserve energy through utilities, through lighting changes, through anything, I guess, that would allow the city to save money on those utility line items. I assume it's for every city building that we've got. I know he's done some work out at the ballpark of putting those lights at LED and putting them on motion sensors in restrooms, stuff like that to conserve energy. Yep.
I have a question.
But it's not,
Wouldn't JEA be a good source to do that without a cost?
I assume they have people that could come in, and I would love to have an energy audit done for the Civic Center and Omen Arena, especially just to see if they have any recommendations to help us lower cost on that end, but I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure they do.
I think that's an area, if we have somebody that's turning lights on and off, we can potentially save. Let's see, utilities. That seems to be the largest expense for Omen.
It is. There are some things that come up over there every now and then. We had to replace a couple of computer boards in the chillers, and those aren't cheap. Anything that's spent over there is either because we've delved at a safety issue and it needs to be addressed, or it's an emergency and all of a sudden the air doesn't work, so.
Just so I understand that you have employees both at the Civic Center and at Omen. I know the time that we toured with you, you had a guy over there that if you have some rain issues with Omen, there's some flooding in the basement. Now, does he work both at Omen and at the Civic Center?
There was a full-time person at Omen originally that retired.
Okay.
And so we were able to transfer an employee from a different department over to the Omen Arena, and he was there for a while. And then I started a rotation with our staff so that every employee could be cross-trained in both locations.
Okay.
And so each of our full-time staff members spend 1 week a month at Omen Arena taking care of the duties over there. And if there's an event going on that week, that's your responsibility. That's your event. You call us, we'll send help. Groundskeeping and maintenance both. They've always been real good about helping us out to get things ready. But there's usually just one staff person there because the school system's there during the day and they always have a teacher with them, so.
Mr. Chairman, what do we anticipate when Madison opens? We'll have, that's kind of our one bread and butter tenant that we have over there that's paying. What do we anticipate the usage of Omen?
Go down.
It's a lead you into that one.
Yeah, conversation we constantly have with Lane College. They use it during basketball season. Their gym floor on campus is not conducive for sports, so, we're constantly looking at opportunities for Omen Arena. You interested?
Yeah. It's something that, you know, I think that we've missed the boat on. It was laid out in our, you know, city plan to look at it and from a structural standpoint. We kind of took a different track there for a couple of years. But it is an asset in that community, and I think we need to put it to its highest and best use.
I think there'll be some use over there too, because if I recall, I may be incorrect on JCM needing to use that as well. I can't remember if they're having a gym on their campus.
Yeah, they're building a big old
Okay,
gym.
all right, yeah, well, then never mind. Couldn't remember. I know Lane College needs it as well, so
Okay.
we're looking at opportunities.
All right.
Yeah. Any other questions for Tosh on Omen or Civic Center?
Thank
I have a
you.
quick Omen question, if I may. Does Omen have asbestos?
I have no idea.
I'm sure
I'm sure.
I'm sure it was
Gotcha.
built in '68,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I would assume in some portions of that building it's there.
I'm sure the roof and the tile
Yeah.
all have asbestos.
You can't just tear it down, you've got to.
Yeah. It'd cost more to tear it down than
Yeah.
it would to build a new one.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is the Legends Museum.
Mr. Chairman.
Right, Zimmer, how you
Council.
doing?
I'm John Wright-Sammer. I handle development for the Legends Museum.
How many people are we having come through the museum on an annual basis?
In 2018, we had 488. In 2019, we had 898. We were on track to get to about 1,500 in 2020. In fact, we had, ironically, April, we had 3 major tours, one of them a European tour coming with 3 buses, all of which were canceled, of course.
So where do we end up for 2020?
Oh, I can't give you an accurate, somewhere around 350. It was just the first quarter, it was 3 months.
Okay.
Could you speak to the, I guess, relationship with the city of Jackson and the Legends Museum? And I think if I understand correctly, we own the building.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then is every entry, is it a ticket transaction? Or is it at times free to certain groups? Like, what is that
The
relationship and scenario?
revenue comes from 2 sources. One is gate admissions,
Okay.
and the other is merchandise. The building is owned by the city, and you all, the city pays for HVAC and electricity and obviously the overhead. And also, there's about 40 hours a week that, of work done there, split between 3 people, and all of which are hourly and below the threshold for having to have benefits.
Could you speak to the, I'm sorry,
No, go
Mr. Chairman, could you speak to the nature of the repairs that you have in the budget this year?
This past year.
I believe, let's see, we have 20,000 proposed for FY '21, of over roughly 4,500 last year.
I'm not actually sure what additional has to be done. I know we repaired the roof was repaired by one contractor at some point during 2019, and then, but you're talking about future, is that correct?
Just, yeah, FY '21, $20,000.
Yeah, I don't know what is scheduled for repair on the building.
Okay.
So that has only to, I'm sorry, that has only to do with the building, is that correct?
I think that's so.
Yes.
Because other than that, it's memorabilia, okay. And then in terms of the revenue generated through the ticket sales, does that come back into this department?
Yeah, well, the previous administration had set it up one way. And we haven't, basically, yes, all of the money for merchandise and all of the money for admissions goes to a city account. The previous administration had indicated that that money would be used had to be used because it had entered the city account, would have to be spent based on city purchase procedures, but would be spent by the museum specifically for marketing, to bring more people in. But we have not spent any of that money, so all of it's gone to the city.
Okay.
It's not a great deal of money.
That was gonna be my question.
Yeah, I
The
think
merchandise amount, any
Roughly, right
percentage?
now, our admission revenue is about, in round numbers, $5,000, and our merchandise sales per year is about $5,000. So it's not a great deal of money. What we have to do is, we have to generate substantially more volume of people coming, and the only way you do that is you let the people know that are coming to Nashville and that are coming to Memphis that we're on the way between those two cities. But there's more than 2 million. They say that somewhere between 2 and 4 million people arriving at each of those locations, and they're driving down I-40. All we need is 1 or 2% of those people, and we will have 20,000 people in admissions every year. It's not an impossible thing to do, but it is impossible unless you do marketing, unless you actually let people know you're here.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think the gentleman brings up a good point that currently, if you're on I-40 traveling between Memphis and Nashville, there is not an exit designated for downtown or that shows anything that directs anybody towards downtown. There's no wayfinding along I-40. I think for venues and just for the advancement of our downtown area, that would be a significant push that we could make this year, is to work with the state to get whether it be exit, was that 79 or 85 on either end, whatever's more convenient to get people to come through our city and go to downtown Jackson. If you don't know it's down there, it's gonna be hard to get down there, and we could. Yeah, I think he makes a great point that if we can capture even a small percentage of those people, that could be beneficial for a number of efforts that we have.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Reitzheimer?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir. Next up is the NED.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I don't know if it would be beneficial for me to give you, I'm not sure how well y'all know what we have there and what is existing. I don't know if it'd be beneficial for you to let me go through a couple of little things.
Yes.
We do 12 art exhibits a year there. We change it every 2 months. We have 9 renters. They're art studios and that pay rent, well, all but 2, I think, pay rent every month. We do 4 children's productions a year, 2 musicals and 2 straight plays. The Jackson Theater Guild does also 4 shows a year. They rent the facility from us. We have 3 schools that come in. One of them stays 3 weeks at a time, and the other 2 stay a couple weeks, and one of those schools comes in the fall and one in the spring, so it actually comes twice. We also have, on a normal year, 6 concerts, a concert series. This past year was our largest number of season ticket holders, and obviously this year has kind of messed that up a little bit, and we will not be having the first 3 of our concerts this year. We had to call and cancel them, but they are on board to possibly maybe come as part of our season next year if it works that way. We have 3 that will be February, March, and April. We have 1 that got postponed in April, and that is the Mark Twain one. It will be in October, and it is not a musical one. It's more of a dialogue, like with Samuel Clemens kind of thing, so that one's gonna be done with social distancing. The only problem that I'm having, obviously right now, is the furloughs, because we don't have people to work on them. It's only Betsy and I right now, so it takes more than 2 to work every single night of the week and then all day. So that's another reason we don't have just a ton happening right now. And we're also working on a children's workshop at the end of July and auditions for August. And here again, we're going to be doing that a different way than normal so that we can social distance with our kids.
Any questions for Diane about her budget?
Yeah,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I was just gonna ask, you were talking about, the furloughs. Is there any way to use the volunteer program and to help with that?
I don't think a volunteer is gonna be somebody that can come in and lock our doors, and
Oh, correct.
because anytime we have, like Theater Guild has anything, or any of the schools, we have to have 1 employee there that locks up every night, and I don't think a volunteer would work in that instance. I do use volunteers in our theater camps, which we had to cancel, and I use volunteers with some of the theater program, working backstage and that kind of thing, but I can't really use them to lock our building.
And any sales, because the artwork's always so beautiful and everything.
Thank you.
Do we ever, and we do appreciate everything you're doing, I love it, I wish we could utilize it more. Do we get any revenue from the sales of art? Does that go back to
We
the
get
city?
20% if an artist sells their work. We don't charge the artist to hang,
Right.
but if they sell a piece of their work, then we get 20% of that sale.
Okay, that's good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Diane?
Right. Need some coffee.
They're wanting to put on their own play. That's what they're doing.
They're putting on a
They're
different one.
they're wanting to figure out a play that they can help.
Thank you so much, Diane.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Right, fairgrounds.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
John Robert has fairgrounds, and then you have any questions on that or fairgrounds concessions?
Okay. John Robert, I see a $44,000 increase in salaries. Can you talk about that?
Yes, we have a lady that's been working part-time. She's filled in for a full-time employee that is my secretary. She started filling in. Deanne had a battle with cancer, and so she was out for about a year. So Tina has came in to assist me during her absence. And she has just received her last treatment, and it's kind of in and out, so Tina has done great for us to fill Deanne's role.
I know in some of our previous discussions, you talked about some capital needs that were coming down the pipe in the future on some painting, and I think if my memory serves me correctly, we had a forklift last year and some HVAC that was approved. is there anything that, you know, and this is a question I should have asked to some of the other facilities, anything that's kind of on the fritz that we could see as a potential, something that's popping up, an unbudgeted item?
You and I had spoke, this was some time ago, and we were looking at the five-year plan, which y'all had charged us with several years ago, and I took it very seriously. Me and my staff combed through our facility, and I said, what is it that we're gonna see we're definitely gonna need, that's imperative to our operation, and let's line that out. And we moved right through that list. A lot of times I would come up here and I had capital items, and I admit, if I knew it was gonna cost $20,000, I needed 20, well, I might ask for 28 or 30, because I'd shop it dirt cheap and I'd have money left over. And then I would just hack away at that list and go ahead and get that much further ahead. And to be honest with you, we had a tenant floor machine. Those floor machines are really expensive. The one that we had was about 20 years old. That's been replaced. That forklift was vital to our operation. We've got that. And then we got the new HVAC unit. So all the 4 units that are there at the facility are basically brand new. So to be quite honest with you, we're ready to rock for a while. I mean, we're really to the point to where it's just maintaining the building as things come along, whether it's.
I think the only improvements we talked about were LED light bulbs.
And that was something that I wanted to note. We've got this reduction under utilities and sanitation, and you can see on that actual, going back to 19, you're looking at $92,000 or $93,000 in utilities. So we're proposing that there's $73,000. It's a pretty strong cut, knowing that, I mean, those utilities are gonna be there. And I can tell you right now, that $73,000 is not gonna fly. But I had leftover capital. Again, it's always nice to have a little leftover, maybe do something with. And my plan was to take $8,000 and put LED bulbs on the inside of the exhibit hall. There's 40 lamps there. And with putting those LEDs in there, that was projecting, we said 73,000. I think quite honestly is gonna probably cut the utilities in half. So it's a project that, you know, y'all wanted us to cut, I think initially 1% off of our operating, and I thought, well, where can I go and actually cut greater than 1% and do something that's gonna carry us over down the road? And that was with the LED bulbs, because, I mean, if we can cut, let's say we cut 92,000 in half, or, you know, or maybe just a little above, I mean, that's pretty significant to our operating. Because, I mean, you look at salaries and you look at utilities, I mean, a lot of those are pretty well your greatest operating expenses there. So the mayor and I talked, that leftover capital, I barely missed it, because I'd have spent it if I could. But I got that HVAC unit, and so let's use capital for next year if we can do that. I mean, you're talking $10,000. We'll probably get that back in savings in 3 months. And then from there, we all understand. So that's a big thing on the list. It's not a big expense, but it's going to do some good for us in decreasing our operating expenses. And yeah, like you said, the rest, the facility's going to need some paint. There's some fencing around there, around the facility. The posts have been there for probably since '91. They're rotted out. You know, and if something just comes up out of nowhere that hits us, in the face, and we have to absorb some costs, but we're pretty good there.
And so the concessions budget department is when someone rents a facility and the cost to put those events on? Is that how that ties into?
Yeah, the concessions is somewhat of a revenue stream for the department. If there is an event that comes in that, you know, first of all, if it's worth our while to set up, you know, if it's gonna bring in 50 people, then, you know, obviously we're not gonna bring in employees and buy the food, but that's run by us.
Okay.
And so the flea market's there. There's several events where concessions is up and running.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's ran by us.
All right, any more questions for John Robert? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And, I mean, last one right there, we have no one here to talk about, can briefly discuss it, is ballpark. We've discussed it numerous amount of times. We are taking everything that was in marketing, advertising, and other funds and other line items, put it all together, one area, so we can see where we're spending on that. Sportsplex.
Afternoon, Mayor, Council.
Good afternoon.
I'll just start off by saying my first year plus, first full year has been a little bit interesting with getting rolling and having the pandemic hit and having to kind of stop midstream and kind of start changing everything that we thought we were going to do this year. But last weekend, we did start tournaments back with a softball tournament, and this weekend, we've got our first baseball tournament with 83 teams. Next weekend, 83 teams plus softball, so we are starting rolling again. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions moving forward with anything regarding budgets and how we're operating.
So this is a little bit different as the Sportsplex is being rolled into the general fund. And with the sunsetting of the sales tax agreement and the hotel motel tax agreement, which helped subsidize some of the deficit that was being generated over there.
Yes, sir.
And I know you and I have talked about this before. It's been a while, but what do you think, if we talk about the operating efficiency of the Sportsplex, where do you think we're at presently?
I think every day, that's one of the things that I wake up trying to figure out, and ever since I've gotten there, trying to figure out how we operate more efficiently. I think we're operating more efficiently today than we were a year ago. And I think we can always get better. I think the changes that we are making with the guidelines that we're having to operate under with the due to the pandemic, I think moving forward will be new models that we will operate under probably just because it just makes more sense. And for instance, Councilman Taylor, I mean, just the way we're going to operate concessions. You know, we're basically doing snacks. We're not operating a full service kitchen moving forward. It's packaged food, bottled drinks, and that's for a number of reasons. For the safety guidelines due to COVID, that's how we're going to operate. I'm not putting a ton of people in the concession stands to cook. We got to space people out. But it also is just mitigating my risk on being able to cut employment costs by not having to have a ton of people working out there. I have virtually zero chance of having any food waste with what I'm selling. So if I do have any weather issues or any of those things, I don't have to worry about having a ton of people on the clock, having a bunch of food cooked. So it's going to reduce our food cost, it's going to reduce our labor cost, and so all the way across the board. So the way that we are doing that, though, we are going up $2 a person at the gate, so we're going to get, trying to keep our revenue whole while eliminating some of our operating cost. And, you know, I think regardless of how the guidelines going on because of COVID, I just think, you know, if what I have projected and the numbers that I projected out last weekend for our softball tournament, we actually did a little bit better. We ended up doing about $1,500 better in concession sales than what I thought we would. And our expenses were just a little bit less. So, and that's the way I projected all the way out, looking at our budget moving forward. And we're letting people, because of that, we're letting people bring in the food that they want. So it's actually getting some of the restaurants out in our area and hopefully all over Jackson a little shot in the arm too, because they're having to go out and visit Jack's or visit some of the restaurants and bring food in. So it's a win-win for everyone by doing that. So hopefully that is helping our, you know, it's going to help us be more efficient operationally because we're cutting down on labor cost, food cost. And then we're not having to monitor and not let all the food, monitor what food's coming in because now we don't care. So it's cutting down our labor costs there as well.
From an operational standpoint, you know, one of the things that we had discussed previously was how the city was misrepresenting the number of teams that were actually coming in. I know you've taken some steps to
absolutely
to go back and correct those numbers. You know, the sports Plex exists purely for economic impact.
Absolutely.
Presently. So if we look at and the economic impact is directly correlated to the number of teams that we bring in. And I would say it's even more correlated to those teams that come from outside of 50-mile radius.
Yes, sir.
And so, you know, when I look at how we stack up against our peers in this department, you know, I'm seeing some facilities that are, you know, 8 to 9 field facilities doing the same number of teams that we're doing on an annual basis. And I see those that are in the same, a 17-field complex doing double what we're doing.
Yes, sir.
And so when I look at it as how efficient are we, I see we're at 50% of what we could be doing. So that means it's an easy slope up, but we have to hustle to get there and do that.
I agree.
And so, you know, right now our revenue less our expenses, we've been averaging about $1 million that the city eats a year in revenue versus expenses in order to get that economic impact. So I don't want to leave that alone. But the economic impact, per a study from Jonesboro, Arkansas, $140 is associated with each player per team. If you said that there's 11 players on average per team, it comes out with the numbers that we've been generating that the economic impact per the numbers that you've provided us is about 1.1 million. So it's almost like a break even. We're not really seeing the generation of that economic impact that we need. I would propose that impact needs to be at least 2 to 3-fold, whatever we invest. Otherwise, we could just go ahead and reinvest that money in some other way into the city. And so that's the challenge that I bring to you and to your organization.
Yes, sir.
When I look at models that other people are doing outside of Jackson, a lot of them go out and hire somebody at $125,000 to do all the booking, to get all the teams in there. They have their Parks and Rec department come in and take care of all the fields. And so I think there's other models that we need to look at. And in addition to that, we have to get out. We have to be in Nashville. As I talk to these directors, and you know I'm calling them, as I get around, I talk to these guys, they're telling us Nashville is the untapped resource. We are located in a way between Memphis and Nashville that we can start to bridge the gap between those two baseball communities. And I think we've continued to miss the boat on it. We have to be able to get out, take some trips down to Nashville, meet these coaches, give them some discounted tournament fees to get them in here. Because the more that they come, the more impact that we get. We're already dumping $1 million into it a year. So we have to be able to turn that around and have some return on that investment.
Yes, sir. And, we did, we understand that, we went and set up at the ABCA National Convention at Opryland Hotel last year with that in mind, being there. We understand Nashville, Middle Tennessee. We should be getting those teams, absolutely. And I think it is paying off. This weekend, next weekend, we have teams from all over Middle Tennessee playing here this weekend, next weekend. Out of the 83 teams that we have coming in, we have 31 teams this weekend that's going to be overnighters. Next weekend, 32 teams that are overnighters. Last fall was one of the best falls that attendance-wise with the 236 teams that we had last fall. One of the better falls that we've had in years. We started the year off with our first tournament with the 91 teams, and then you take the next 2 weeks, where we were. I really think, again, I know COVID happened. We can't go back, and hindsight's always 20/20. But if you just take those numbers that we would have only, with these last 3 weeks that we're actually getting to play this month, that first tournament, we would have only had to average about 30 teams a tournament of the 13 tournaments that we lost, and we would have passed our teams from last year, which we would have obliterated this year's numbers.
The point I'm making is that there's not a high bar to pass. I mean, the bar is
absolutely.
The bar is very low at present.
Absolutely.
So to get increases should be layups. We need to start going for the 3-point shots. And I'm using a different sport analogy here, but I'm not looking for basic singles. We need some home runs. If you look at Jackson for this year, we've had and these numbers are ballparking, 290 teams since the 2020 season began, about 48 teams per tournament. If we look at South Haven, they've had 112 teams per tournament at 562 teams total. If we look at Oxford, they're at 63 teams per tournament. What I'm recommending is that we have to go to somewhat of a different model, or we have to start hustling. And it's not that we go to one conference a year and talk to people. We have to be there every week. Every other week, we're driving to Memphis and Nashville, talking to Doolin's, talking to these guys in Nashville. That's what it's going to take. I mean, otherwise, we're just going to keep throwing money into the pile, and we're not going to get the return. The businesses that exist out there, when we pitch them, it's on the success of the sportsplex.
I understand that.
And so when they come back and they say, and they've come to the mayor's office in previous years and said, hey, we're not getting the return that we need on this. We're not getting the attendance. We have to start paying attention to this. It is, I would commend the staff that takes care of the fields. It's one of the best facilities I've seen. I do this all the time. I travel all over the place looking at these things. We have the highest quality facility, one of in this region, but we have to get out and start hustling. I think you've done a good job with with starting to change the perception as far as how we interact with the public and those visitors. I think there was some difficulty that we were having with the previous administration over there. And I think you've done a good job in that, but it's gonna take hustle. It's gonna be putting miles on the car and going and talking to people and shaking hands to get the teams in here. And they're not gonna come. This isn't build a field and they'll come play. We have to go hustling. And I kind of get off my soapbox there, but I feel this is a reason why I got involved in all this in the first place, was because I watched the previous administration manipulate the numbers, make people feel like things were going well, when in reality they aren't.
Yes,
And
sir.
the bar isn't high, but we need to start jumping over the bar every year.
I agree, and I know you and I have had that conversation, and that's one of the major reasons when U-Trip said, hey, we can backlog and backfill the schedule. When the tournaments got canceled, we jumped to schedule everything we possibly could on through October to make sure we didn't miss a weekend. And we're going to play every tournament we can, because I understand that those businesses out there are there because of the sportsplex, and that if we're not open, they're not making any money. And that's why in FY '21, we're playing 33 tournaments. I mean, we have to. We owe that to the businesses that located out there for that reason, and we're gonna do everything we can to fill those tournaments up. I mean, we've got right now already, I've already said 83 for the next 2, but even into July, we're already at 60, 66, 65. And I mean, we're getting them signed up early, and we're gonna do everything we can to fill those things up.
We need 100 a weekend.
I understand.
That's the goal.
It absolutely is.
If we have 100 a weekend, that's what South Haven's, they're 117, 119, 115. If we get 100 a weekend, then we're really in the big leagues. We're playing with them. And if we need to go down and talk to them about how they're doing it, I know that's where the U-Trip director is, but if we need to go talk to him about how can we better access these teams, not only from North Mississippi, Arkansas, Kentucky, but we have to also go to the east
Yes.
and start talking to Nashville. And again, the economic impact isn't about bringing teams from Lexington or Huntington.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're gonna come, they may eat at Los Portales, and they're bouncing out. We gotta bring the teams from outside of a 50-mile radius so that they come and they stay in our hotels.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, I was just gonna say from just a past, experience, that these parents are so invested in this, that you might have a group of really good, smart business people, but they're also very invested, like, with their children, that you could maybe get a group of parents that would also help you. They know people that's, 4 hours from here. They play with them. They've grown up. They've done this for 15 years. They always take their vacations at the certain point, so their children are doing their travel ball. So you could get some help and enlist some of these parents that are so active, that are in the community, that want to see, this thrive also. Just
Absolutely.
a suggestion, but
Thank you.
this is the biggest point that I see. Parents that are involved in this, they're gonna they spend everything, their vacation money on travel ball.
Yes.
And doing that for their children.
We have any
So-
questions about the budget?
Mr. Compton, on,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
as we are rolling this under the general fund, I know there's the position of revenue manager. Does that change any? Is that still with our new kind of structure? Is that still a necessary?
Yeah, Lynette is
Okay.
our revenue manager,
Gotcha.
and she was on furlough, but whenever the tournament started back, I was able to bring her back from furlough.
Okay.
to
So that'll
handle those
operate the
things.
same as it has
Yes.
with Mr. Arnold? I guess there's no restructuring of anything underneath that?
Duplication of
Duplication
services.
No, sir.
No, she's taking the money out there, so, and then taking it to our finance, but yeah, our finance department ain't gonna go out there and take the money. She's gonna be one taking the money, handling the books out there for us.
Because a lot of that
Okay,
happens.
so that's handling it on site,
Yeah.
not
On site.
necessarily.
And a lot of that
department.
happens at
Okay.
11 o'clock on a Saturday night, Friday night, Sunday night, and handling all those things over the weekends.
Gotcha,
and-
okay.
Yes.
It'll be the same way, it was done the same way prior, it was just that the funds were set up different. And so she will still be handling the finances on site, send them to the city finance, so it's just, instead of them, our finance department put it in a different bucket, they're just putting it in the general fund bucket now instead of the separate special enterprise bucket.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Sure. And then given we've asked this a lot today, but just, I know there's a big chunk of your budget that's salaries. Like, we feel, given the current deficit we're facing, that we've got the right people in place. Is there any other efficiencies we see in some of these higher paid positions?
I think, I still have a couple on furlough at this point, and we're functioning right now without them. And we're losing, we had a lot of our seasonal employees that had other jobs or other things came up, and they're not coming back, and we're out busting our tails right now. Last week, even with 25 teams, I mean, Ryan and I both put 65-hour weeks in last week, and we're going to bust our tails and do what we have to make these things work. It is what it is. We're going to do the best we can, and this is what we signed up to do, and this is all we know to do. So You know, that salary, that line item, you know, I didn't really increase it with the, because in that salary, in that regular salary line item is our full-time, which is 8 full-time people, which is 3 for the grounds full-time. But that also includes all of our part-time grounds, which I don't really like that there. I'm in the process of working with Kathy on trying to get a grounds on a separate area. I don't like those commingled together. I want to see that separate, like I do concessions and everything else. But I didn't increase that line because of the 10 additional tournaments, so I know grounds is going to actually go up a little bit. But I think with the furloughs and everything, that's going to drop the full-time some, but I think it's going to be made up some in the grounds with those 10 additional tournaments that we're going to have in the FY. But we're going to work within it because with the concessions and everything working on the scale back, that line is actually going to come down. So we're going to work within the budget. We're going to work with whatever we're given, and the revenue is going to go up based on those 10 additional tournaments as well. You know, there's some expenses that had to go up with the sanctioning fees, with the umpires on those 10 additional tournaments. But the revenue's going up as well. Most of any expenses that went up has definitely got revenues that are going to go up along with that. I tried to project out every single tournament that we have on the books, trying to dial this thing in as much as possible. You know, on the other side, with me working on the county budget committee and everything, I mean, I understand how important this is on trying to dial this in and how much work this is on trying to get this done this year. But also, you know, trying to factor in things on these tournaments like rain or weather or those things. It's just, I can't predict that. I wish I could. If I could do that, I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Sure.
But you know, this is the best guess that I have at this moment on where we are going to end up. And I've worked with Bobby and them on trying to keep him updated through this entire thing on where we were going to end FY20 and where we're going to go into FY21 on these numbers. And it's been very difficult on not knowing how this was all going to play out. But you know,
No, and I know it's a work in progress, but to Councilman Taylor's things that he brought up of when we've got to figure out a way to justify to taxpayers that, you know, when we're seeing the revenue versus expenses, and it's a quality of life thing, we've got to see
Right.
that, be able to justify that economic impact on the other end of
yeah,
it.
and to that, I mean, you know, and I do understand that 100%, and you know, and I do look at, you know, the efficiencies in operations, but also trying to get the team numbers up. Those two things I think about every single day on how we can do both of those things. And also look, you know, the economic impact. I did have Lori run some numbers just over the next 2 weeks of our teams that we have coming out. This is just a model for the next 2 weeks of the 83 teams coming out. Of the 83 teams, of the day trippers and overnighters coming out, we broke down where the teams are coming from, and she put this into the Play Tennessee impact study for that's just a model for the next 2 weeks on the direct spending and the economic impact for just June 19th and June 26th that Lori Nunnery worked out for me. And again, we look at this and understand what that impact is, and we're going to continue to do everything we can because I fully understand what each and every team that we sign up, what that means to the economy. Not just to the revenue that the city brings in, but to the entire economy in Jackson. And we have to fill the place up. I understand that. And not just for the travel tournaments. I mean, you know, we had reached out and you know, had signed up and figured out how to bring in this year the Cal Ripken Southeast Regional and how to bring Dixie Youth State tournaments this year. And again, that all got messed up with the pandemic. But, you know, those additional events, not just for travel, but trying to find out how to do additional events. And then, you know, with the prospects of Great Wolf Lodge coming on in the future, you know, there's more opportunities for more World Series and different things there that we want to be ready for to have more events going on.
Is there the opportunity for us to host the local Cal Ripken leagues during the week?
Absolutely, I would love to, and I've had that conversation with Aubrey. I've had the conversation for softball, Dixie Youth with Rick Shackelford as well. And we have done the Cal Ripken leagues on certain nights. Some of it is a little bit of they sell their own concessions at Pope and at Oakfield, and that's how they do their fundraisers. So if they play at our park, they don't have that opportunity for their fundraising. But I've opened that up and said, hey, we'd love to have you anytime, because if we have softball, rec league softball going on a couple fields, and we have Cal Ripken baseball on a couple fields, that could be the first time in forever that a mom and dad could have daughter and son playing at the exact same park and not be 25 minutes away from each other. And I think, I would welcome that. I mean, those fields are to be used, and again, that helps
It's
that
a
helps all the
concession
development
revenue,
out there.
Right, if we can figure that out.
I would love that.
All right, any additional questions on Sportsplex budget? All right, thank you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, health and sanitation. You all know our new health and sanitation director, Ms. Leilani. Harvey's back.
I'll just start us off. We got this, some things have transferred out of the solid waste fund, and so we've seen a smaller department. The salaries seen a decrease. We had 8 in the office, now we have 4. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Mills now.
Great introduction.
She's doing great.
6 weeks in, a lot of changes.
In the budget hearing.
Yes. In a pandemic, 2 storms, lots of bulk waste piles. We have recently started a new routing system. We are divided into 6 districts, which is based on the households using the building inspector mapping system. So we work the same districts that the building department works. Our resources for picking up the hundreds, thousands of bulk waste piles that are out there right now are 8 city call trucks and 2 waste management trucks. We are doing a route right now because we're really literally going street to street. And as soon as we get a street clean, people are going to their sheds or they're going to the backyard and they're putting stuff back out. So we're doing the best we can to keep up. We're working diligently. Our guys are exhausted. But right now, we have a website where you can keep up with our tonnage, our piles, and for the month of June, we have picked up over 2,400 piles with 10 claw trucks.
How many people were furloughed in your department?
9.
Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Pittman, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
You have 10 operational claw trucks?
Yes,
8.
that's correct.
Okay.
8 of those
8
are
plus the 2.
city-owned,
Yeah.
and 2 of those are waste management.
Operation.
Operation, yes.
Okay.
Operating trucks. Claw
Okay.
truck drivers with their trucks, yes.
Did I work it down?
Yes, we actually have 1 or 2 right now out of commission in the garage. Those are quite often in the garage. So,
Plus, I think, if memory serves me correct, 3 years ago, the council purchased 2 new claw trucks.
I believe so. That was another admission at that point, but admission, I think.
And we've, Leilani and I have talked, and once we get through this budget process and we can close the books on 2020 and see where we are in the solid waste fund. I know one of those claw trucks that is in the shop more than it's on the road, doesn't have any AC in it, and so we're gonna look at, starting it, working with Leilani on a 5-year capital replacement plan for those trucks as well. So we wanted to figure out how much money we had in the fund first before we started making a plan.
Mr. Chairman, one of the issues I run into with constituents is just a general lack of knowledge regarding what health and sanitation versus waste management versus, who does what and how it's supposed to go. what are the efforts, because I don't really see anything in the budget, I don't know, public relations or something along that line. Do we have any efforts in that regard?
Not currently. Right now, Waste Management is our solid waste contractor. So that's basically what we go on. The call truck,
If I may, we have ideas, but nothing tangible right now.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman McKelvey of if we can find a way for some education or kind
Sure.
of getting the word out, I think that'll, one, give the residents the knowledge they need, and so that'll calm their frustrations, but also for the efficiency and working of the department, hopefully they
Yeah,
will be able to. So I think it'd be you know, shouldn't be like a crazy amount of money, but a good expense.
Without,
long run.
you know, I'm sorry, I get
No,
that
you're-
time I'm picking up, I'm sorry. I'm looking to see what all we're gonna be able to do and how quickly with the new website, July 1. I don't think that's gonna be the silver bullet and all that. I'm gonna start there, then build from that.
Sure.
One thing about the budget I do wanna talk about is number 296, landfill dumping. We have a small internal dispute on whether it's gonna be closer to FY19 or FY20, but we're gonna keep our eye on that. And that's just what I wanted to say on that, maybe more, because we're picking up a lot more stuff.
We pay tipping fees for those.
Yeah, landfill fees.
How are we utilizing the waste management claw trucks presently?
They are, well, see, I've got 8 city trucks and 2 waste management trucks in 6 districts, so that makes 4 extra. So I have them in the extra districts. You know, I just have 1 truck.
Right, it's not extra. They're running a route just like everybody else. When she says extra, there are people in single-member districts, and there are ones in heavier districts, and they're running half of that as well.
Okay. So out of the 8, 10 claw trucks we're running, and we have 6 districts, some districts obviously have a heavier load.
That's
So we're running 2 claw trucks in some of those districts. Okay.
Yes, sir. And we're also monitoring the landfill tickets on waste management as well as us to make sure none of the, you know, keeping everybody on.
I don't know, we could
And
debate.
going to doing our billing different, we're going that route?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are actually fixing to try to start some e-billing. We are doing a trial run this month with just a handful of customers to make sure that that works out as well, so.
The exciting thing about that, we've had this capability the whole time, never utilized it. We've had somebody down there that would spend a whole day, twice a month, go into a room, stuffing envelopes, putting the bills in there, sending out the payments. And then the payments would then be receipted to the revenue office here. And so if somebody would call with a question, they didn't know, talk here, talk there. We're able to, like I said, with less staff, they're gonna receipt the payments out at H&S. And they're gonna be able to answer the question, one-stop shop for people when they call if they have a problem with their dumpster. And I guess that was the end of my point.
Save on postage as well.
Saving on postage.
Any more questions for Leilani?
Well, congratulations.
Yes.
Looking
Thank
forward to working with you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the departments coming up and giving a presentation. So what we'll do now is open the public hearing for the item under first reading. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of or opposition to? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Do I have a motion for the ordinance to establish our FY '21 operating capital and property tax for City of Jackson?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Pickens, second by Councilman Dodd. Any discussions?
What we're projecting, Mr. Arnold, maybe you can speak to this, is a $4.2 million deficit going into this fiscal year. For the general fund, right. And we're projecting presently a $1.2 million draw on that fund balance for the present fiscal year. Can you
That's
give
correct.
us the fund balance to date?
What was the last part?
The fund balance at present, before we draw the 1.2?
Yeah, so, the beginning fund balance for the general fund for this fiscal year that we're wrapping up was $17,719,000. We're projecting an ending fund balance this year at, of 17 million, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong year, my apologies. The beginning fund balance, well, let me back up. So the beginning fund balance at the beginning of this year for the general fund, 17.7 million. Projected ending fund balance this year, 17.3 million. $4.2 million deficit next year. So an ending fund balance for the general fund at June 30th of 21 of 13.1 million.
Say the last figure again.
The last figure again? The projected ending fund balance at June 30th of 2021 for the general fund would be $13.1 million.
I think we need to, the council needs to consider the significance of this fund balance reduction. In my research, I've yet to find a city outside of Nashville Metro that has had an increase in expenses. I think we need to be aware of that going in, that one, the reduction in our fund balance puts us more at risk for if we go into another resurgence of the virus or any other thing that could come down the pipe. It puts us at risk of being able to have that ability to fund necessary services. The question that ultimately I come to is, how do we fund this? Do we just eat it this year, and then consider what we're going to do next year, or do we or are we responsible about it? Have more additional reductions to this budget, or do we have a discussion about additional revenue?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, been on this council a long time. I've seen the fund balance, $3 million. I've seen the fund balance, $22 million. But we made it. There were some up years and there were some down years with respect to fund balance, and we had to dip into it. But through growth and development, we made it. Now, I know that we got a pandemic going on, and who knows? In the fall, there may be another, but we're gonna make it. We don't know what's coming down, trickling down from the feds through the state, but we're gonna make it. As I forestated in the beginning, I've seen the fund balance at $3 million, and I've seen it as high as $22 million on this council.
If I could speak to that, certainly, no one wants to budget a deficit in any fund, and no one wants to spend down our reserves if it's all possible to avoid that. As we know, there's some significant uncertainties in these revenue projections for next year. We're required to pass a budget, I think everybody knows that, by June 30th. One way to think about next year is to, the budget, whatever the budget is that the council elects to put forward and moving into next year, will need to be monitored very, very closely to make sure that our performance is consistent with the budget, make sure that the revenue projections are coming in as we projected, hopefully better than we projected, and certainly if they're worse than we're projected, we'll need to take immediate action, to amend the budget, whether, again, that's through an increase in revenues or further decreases in expenses. It's just because of the uncertainty surrounding the revenues next year, to, to take and make more aggressive expense reductions, which is certainly possible, but I would just say we should think really hard, you know, about that, until we see what the revenues are.
Mr. Chairman.
And I
I'm
think
sorry,
there's
Rob.
opportunities, I'm pretty familiar with the budget now. I think there are opportunities for us to perform better than, this budget, particularly if we make a commitment to, manage our cost. And just because something is budgeted this way would not prohibit us from making decisions, you know, over the course of the year to control our cost as best we can. Just
If I may, and Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, this is just, if this budget is passed on this first reading, there will be an opportunity to make amendments to it pre the second vote, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to that point too, if I could point out, as you've seen over the course of today, this continues to be a work in progress. There are some minor issues that were vetted today, questions that were asked today that we'll need to clean up and address before the second reading of this budget ordinance. And so I just want to be clear, the numbers may move a little bit between now and I guess next week. But that will primarily be just efforts for us to get the numbers as accurate as we can. There's some, I know there's gonna be some slight adjustments in the capital outlay fund, where we're gonna probably end up decreasing the estimated expenses for this year and increasing the carryover for a couple of items in the capital outlay fund and things like that.
Yeah, just to reiterate, you know, the issue that we're seeing down the pipe is for the next 3 to 4 years is not sunny. We're gonna have increasing debt service requirements. That I think unless we see, I would assume if we talk to the property tax office that we're probably gonna see a reduction in our property taxes come FY '22. I think we're delayed in that. And so what I'm trying to advise the council is we need to be very cautious at the present because the future is unknown. And as we understand Councilman Buchanan's point that in his tenure here, he's seen that fund balance get as low as $3 million. That is our safety net. I've heard him refer to it as that, our rainy day fund. And today it's raining, and we need to spend a portion of it. But I think there are other opportunities where there is additional revenue within the city that we can tap into that we haven't done yet. And I think there's additional expense reduction, some of which was identified today, that we could look at as well. I would hope that you know, we would be good stewards of the taxpayers' money in this regard. But you know, here we are at present. If there's an opportunity for us to look at some things over the next week as we go through continue this budgeting process, I think we need to take a hard look at what we're doing before we sign. But I know that when we approve money, it's going to get spent. And so we need to take a hard look at what we're doing before we approve a $4.2 million reduction in our fund balance.
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Taylor, to you, I say that each quarter, you got your budget committee, you have your finance director. You can look at this each quarter and keep us abreast. You have your mayor, and let us know what's going on. It's not like it's gonna happen overnight that we're spending money. Y'all gonna let us know something, report back to the entire council every 90 days. So, it's a budget.
I understand.
All right, any further discussions? Council, please vote.
Oh, Cisco's not here.
6-2. Motion passes 6-2.
All right. Second reading. consideration of a budget amendment to move $750,000 from debt service fund balance to debt service revenue and expense.
So move.
Have a motion?
Second.
Motion by Brooks, second by Dodd. Any discussion? Council, please vote. Vote is unanimous.
It passed.
New business, recommendation to award Delta Contracting for material and labor to construct the project named 85 Storm Drainage Collapse.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I will be abstaining from discussion and voting on this as there potential for a conflict of interest.
Recognize.
As you know, we're under a court order to get this work done, and Lewis Cobb and Scott Chandler are here to answer any questions. But what we did was we hired TLM to draw up specifications on this, and 4 companies came to pick up the invitation, and we only had one to turn in a bid. I'm sorry about that, but we only had one. Those who picked them up were Delta Contracting, Martin Paving, Enscore, and Thompson & Thompson. And the base bid is $308,946. Do you have any questions on this?
Move to award the contract to Delta Contracting.
Second.
I have a motion.
question.
Let me call the motion a second first. I have a motion by Buchanan, second by Brooks. Questions?
Could you speak to TLM's involvement and in that process?
Mr. Chandler will answer that question for you.
Well, basically, they did the kind of a quick design of the project. They were initially, Terry Drumright was initially brought into the case to, I guess, as an expert engineer on our behalf. And because he was already on, I guess, on board and familiar with the project, and their firm was able to move into design the direction we went with that consultant.
So are we paying TLM separately from, like this number we've got here is the Delta Contracting, right? So is TLM operating like as an owner representative and they have a separate fee for this
They are.
specific project?
Yeah, this is just for the construction. This is a construction contract.
Get a little history on why we're having to do this now.
Right, yeah, that'd be good.
I gave Mr. Chandler a stack of documents about that high, about the legal proceedings to date. Briefly, there was development on the northeast corner of Exit 85. One of the people that bought land there was Pilot Oil. The people that owned it originally from about 1970 to 1997 had placed some underground storm sewer pipes, kind of a recurring theme lately. Then after that purchase, there was another pipe placed in an area that had been abandoned by Madison County when Christmasville Road was rerouted, going southwest to northeast to more north-south. Madison County bought some land to the east, to the west of that road, so that there is literally no man's land. The last people that owned it,
Right there's the right-of-way line.
yeah, the last people that owned it didn't have a deed to it. So when you go and look at the property assessor's office, the owner is none of the above. When the city annexed that area, Madison County said it's no longer ours, even though the road had not been on it for several years. But in 2000, about 1999 or 2000, someone put a pipe in what was Dyer Creek. Dyer Creek was an open ditch back then and about 30 feet below ground. Now there was a corrugated steel pipe with 30 feet of dirt over it, and 20 or 25 years later, after the development and after time, they're developed what they call a sinkhole. It's not really a sinkhole. It is a predictable problem in every underground storm sewer pipe. So what the city is doing is in response to the litigation that's been filed initially by a pilot against the city, is the judge ordered, somebody's got to fix it, and right now, the most logical choice he thought, I didn't agree, Mr. Chandler didn't agree, would be the city. So we've been ordered to fix it. So we're doing this because that is what the court has ordered. That's a temporary order, not permanent, not final. So, I met and talked with TLM. We needed someone to analyze the hydrology problems and its solutions, to come up with a solution that was the most cost-effective short-term, but more long-term. We're going back with concrete because based on the court's order, we've got to fix it, and we may be responsible for the next 100 years or forever. So Scott Chandler thought, the consultant thought using concrete was the best solution for this problem, because that highway's not going anywhere. Christmasville Road's not going anywhere. That development is important. So that's why we're having concrete go in. But
We also have we have the only portion that we've been charged to fix that does not have a pipe that's intact on our section. The pipe continues on under Pilot parking lot and on to Gary Taylor's detention area for the Sandstone development. And they're gonna be able to salvage some of theirs and concrete line the metal pipe in areas. But because we were to the point where we were having to replace pipe anyway, the discussion was, do we put brand new metal pipe in and then concrete line it? And by the time you would do that, you were very close to the cost of a concrete pipe anyway. So that's kind of the methodology we went through to see what was the most economical for us to do.
Okay.
one other thing, the material cost is higher, but when you're dealing with something that's 30 or 40 feet below ground, when you dig to get down, you've got to have a broad scope, and the cost of replacement, the labor is a huge component. Safety issues and so forth.
So
And
we have-
TLM, go ahead.
So we have no idea who did the work prior to us getting ready to do the.
We have no proof, we have some ideas.
Is the property issue been resolved so that,
No.
okay, so potentially, I mean, hopefully it doesn't break for another 100 years, but if it, or however long the life of that, but if it did, would we be in the same boat again?
As of today, yes.
Okay.
All those things are in dispute
Okay.
and will be resolved either by some sort of settlement or by some court. But
Okay.
that's, the time it's gonna take for that is 2 or 3 years, and the hole is getting bigger, bigger and bigger, and has started to cause a collapse of the parking lot, and will continue to grow until it returns to its natural state.
Okay. And did we execute the bid process with our purchasing department, or was it TLM that handled?
I sent out the bids.
Okay.
Terry Drumright wrote the specifications, and I sent out the bids.
Okay. And again, I know we've talked about it over and over. Whenever we see one bid, it's hard to know, hey, are we getting a good, bang for our buck? But,
I think this is such an unknown. People were
Okay.
afraid to maybe bid on this.
But you sent out 4 bids though. You had 4 bids that.
Oh, I sent
we only
out,
got one back.
I sent out probably
So what do you do about that?
50 bids,
I would say-
invitations.
Would
I mean,
say
you
this
send them out,
concrete
but
pipe
it's expired. You
is
can't
about
deny who do it.
3,100 pounds a foot, so you're looking at a really heavy pipe to lay. And, fortunately, Delta Contracting is equipped to do that. They have that same equipment right up the road working on the interstate right now. So a lot of companies would have to respond and mobilize to the area. They've got the equipment that can handle that size pipe.
And
already.
Mr. Chandler, your expertise, like, that amount you feel is appropriate for the
Yeah,
project?
it actually can, we had estimates where we looked at how much we thought the metal would cost, how much trying to open ditch it, which nobody really wanted us to do, and then also putting the concrete in. And, the overall project come in really close to what our estimates were to begin with.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Council, please vote. Okay. All right. No further business come before the council. Meeting's adjourned.
No, you don't want to hang out a little bit longer?
We'll have to check, 'cause